Well, hello there and welcome to DF Direct Weekly number 165. And I should immediately explain the sudden increase in production values. I'm actually here physically in the presence of Alex Battaglia. First of all, hello.
Hey there, everyone.
And John Linneman.
Hey, guys.
So obviously everybody knows that recently Gamer Network was acquired by IGN Entertainment, and we had some sort of getting to know you meetings yesterday. And John and Alex came over to London, and we thought, why not make use of the incredible IGN facilities to do DF Direct Weekly? And that explains the sudden order of magnitude increase in production values we're seeing here. But
Not
yeah,
from our houses.
I've got to say, this week was looking pretty light for news until Sony decided to quote-unquote drop the latest state of play, and that means we've actually got a wealth of material to discuss, so I guess we should just get straight to it, right? Okay, first game we're going to be discussing is actually the one that arrived last, and it is the most exciting, I believe, of everything that we had in the lineup, and that was Astro Bot. John, you kind of predicted this was going to happen.
Yes.
It would be arriving.
Yes.
And looks great, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. I was extremely happy about this one because, the rest of the state of play we'll get to, but I love the Astro Bot stuff. I think the VR game was incredible, and then the PlayStation 5 launch game that was included on every system, one of the best things that the PS5 has to date, I would say. And I think I've long wanted this kind of game to be made into a full, proper adventure. You know, the VR one was as well, I would say, but this looks like the kind of thing that I used to love from PlayStation back in the day. Like, this is the kind of stuff that they would make more regularly, like a proper celebration of this kind of stuff. And it's just beautiful. It looks beautiful. It looks fun. It's whimsical. It's nice. And it sort of builds on the aesthetic we saw in that PS5 demo.
Right.
I assume it's still their own technology.
Yeah.
And it looks like a potential, for me at least, could be a potential Game of the Year candidate. We'll see.
That's fantastic.
Very possibly. Mm-hmm. But some of the stuff we liked in there, though, is they're doing a lot with old school physics kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
With the water, with the world geometry getting smashed, a lot of fun things there.
Yeah.
The liquid part where they're kind of spraying the paint to reveal the hidden platforms, and it's sort of dripping down and everything.
Yeah, it's something we haven't seen in games in a long time. In a game like this one, I mean, it's targeting 60 FPS, really obvious in the trailer. It's pretty much just like all the other games they did. It's, VR one is also 60-120 conversion, I think,
right,
originally,
yeah.
right? And so what do you do with all this GPU time if you're not pushing massive, super deformable Senua Saga level characters? Well, you spend that on cool GPU stuff. And I'm imagining this is a GPU sim water thing. And you don't see that. I honestly can't even think the last game that wasn't a physics game that did anything interesting like that. Maybe there's that Sebaltonen game. I always forget the name of Claybook is the last time we saw actual fluid physics in a game that we've at least covered on the channel. So I'm excited to see that always. I'm also like John of the opinion that I'm not a huge Sad Dad Simulator fan, so I really love to see a game that is just celebrating gameplay and celebrating fun visuals and all that stuff. So especially one that targets 60 FPS, I'm always a fan of that. And if it's anything like the most recent endeavors on PC, like we got Sackboy on PC, I think we'll get this eventually at some point on PC too. It'll be interesting to see what they do there too.
I'd be curious though, because this is so one of the things about it is it is actually still a Japanese team developing it.
Right.
So I feel like that could potentially make that conversion less likely somehow, because Sony hasn't really brought Japanese games yet to the PC, have they?
I mean, what other games are you thinking about? Sorry.
They haven't. Any of the Japanese studio games haven't really come, have they?
We've not seen. Maybe they.
Oh, you're talking about Gran Turismo.
We haven't seen
Gran Turismo is the one, and even some Jensen's Prophecy, but
there
just hasn't been any attempt over the. Maybe you're right, because it just hasn't been many
done yet.
which is part of the problem, actually. But,
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
No,
but
so maybe it will, maybe it won't. It's
Maybe
just
it will,
it's hard
maybe
to
it
say
won't.
because we don't know what those relationships with the porting studios are like in terms of what kind of.
if they have a porting studio is another question, right?
But I am happy that, I mean, they still at least have this team doing Japanese development. And you know what? You mentioned the sad dad stuff. We joke about that a lot. I think they make a lot of great games. And the reason we complain about it is more like it felt like the lineup contracted and it's very small now, very few games released, and a lot of them are just these like dark, kind of like overly serious experiences. And what used to make PlayStation great was the fact that they had variety. You did have more serious stuff, but then you had the more whimsical stuff. You had unexpected, quirky things. Like there's just a wide range of software.
Yeah.
And that's how Sony used to be.
It's like,
That's what made PS1 and 2 and even 3 like so great.
Yeah,
Was like
right.
that wide variety, all those studios. And now they've shrunk their lineup of studios so small. It takes so long to make the games. I mean, when you think about how much stuff had released for the PS2 at 4 years after launch, like it was absolutely nuts. And we just don't have that anymore. It's not really feasible with the way games are made these days.
yeah.
So I am happy that they essentially invested in this and allowed this to still happen, because it just looks I actually also love that they're doubling down on that sort of bringing in PlayStation hardware and like physical things into the game world and references to other games.
Yeah.
I think that's fun and cute. That last shot where they're all in space and all the Astro Bots are riding on all the different consoles in Sony's history through space. I think that's really cute and fun. And it feels like a genuine game that's designed to just be happy and bring joy.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Because I think that's one of the reasons that Astro Bot on the pre-pack-in game was just so fantastic. It was actually a joyous console game. Bright primary colors,
Yep.
oozing with character, just incredibly stylized visuals and effects. And you're seeing it all right here. I'm watching the trailer play out here, and it's just absolutely fantastic. If it is a continuation of everything that we've seen before in that first game, I'm just really looking forward to this. I don't think any game as yet has managed to better its DualSense implementation.
No, definitely not.
So we should be seeing some great DualSense stuff there as well.
Also 80 levels, it says, I think.
They said that? Really?
80?
Something like that. Like it's big. It's
So
a
it's like
big game.
So it's like Mario Galaxy style,
Yeah,
you think?
I don't know, but it looks like a full gigantic game. Like with
Yeah,
a
that would
ton of
explain the
content.
dev time, because I was about to ask you about it, because we talked about like smaller, you said like larger games that hence
Right.
this like larger development time, but this must have been too like a larger development
Yeah, no,
time.
I don't think this is a small game at all. It seems
Yeah.
like a really big project, and I saw some people say, "Oh, it better not be $70," but I
Why
put
not?
my money on saying that this is probably worth 70. This is more worthy of being $70 than just about everything else they've released this gen.
The thing is, there is a lot of callbacks to like PlayStation lore, as you pointed out,
Yeah.
in terms of the devices, but also in the characters.
And the characters.
And there's Parappa in there, and it just reminds me
Oh,
of the Sony of the past, right? The PlayStation of the past, which was a rich, diverse range of different games, and not exclusively single player narrative or live action as live service
Yeah.
games. So it's kind of like sort of calling back to a generation gone, which I'm kind of bummed about. And you look at a game like this and you know that this game is going to be hugely successful. It's the type of game that Nintendo makes
Right.
and has made and continues to make with big success.
And I think they might actually be able to pull this off because, one, the pack-in game being included with PS5, a lot of people experienced it. I think
Yeah.
that they associate that with playing PS5 for the first time. They remember the DualSense controller. But then on top of that, the characters themselves are extremely memorable. They're super cute. They're fun. They do a lot of fun stuff with it. Like, I genuinely think that just attracts people. Even people that really aren't super into games see those characters like, oh, that's super cute. That's awesome. Which means I do think they actually have a shot at selling a lot of copies of this and possibly being very successful.
You'd
I
hope.
mean, the reaction, if you look at like the trailers had a ton of views and like the comments are almost universally like super positive. Like people seem super jazzed by this. And I hope it's a success and they take a lesson from this. Like, okay, we need to encourage more of this kind of stuff because that's really what that variety would be great.
Yeah, September 6th, 2024 release date, which is also cool because actually it turns out there's a lot of games coming out in that window.
Terrifying.
But there's nothing like this. I'm
definitely I'm going to cover that before I go back to Tokyo. I think I should be I'll have time for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't wait. Like that's way up there on my list of like games to be excited about.
Mm-hmm. But we've had kind of like a dearth of first-party Sony titles this year. I guess Helldivers is the sort of exception to that. But this kind of has worked to the advantage of this game because there's nothing else from Sony coming.
I'm thinking about that though. I was thinking about it with the state of play. It's just a state of play, not the showcase. This got me thinking. I wonder if they're holding some things back to show alongside the PS5 Professional.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a bit later on because right now it does seem as though Astro Bot is the only first-party title that's going to launch with the console.
Yeah,
and that's slightly problematic for a new console launch.
What if it's 120 frames per second?
Well, maybe.
Oh yeah, it probably would be
rad, dude.
Anything here, I mean, CPU wise, it didn't look like anything that would break the bank. It looked like a game.
Well, a lot of physics.
Yeah,
possibly
GPU-based stuff, though. I think
it could be. You don't know.
Could be. We don't know.
Okay, so that was really cool. Mm-hmm. Let's move on. Let's warp back to the beginning of the state of play. We were actually watching it in my hotel room.
Yeah,
and
we were.
Let's just say that John's face was a picture. You put out a tweet about your disappointment, which the last time of looking, you had like 206,000 impressions on that and 270 comments, and basically Concord. It kicked off with an extended pre-rendered cinematic, and Alex is shaking his head.
This is I hate pre-rendered.
We had some sort of insight from the developer about what it's all about, and then we actually had a gameplay showcase. Well, John, let's talk about this because obviously we're not big fans of the concept of introducing a game with a pre-rendered cinematic. Now, we talked about this with Assassin's Creed Shadows.
We've talked about this for years.
We talked about it for years, most recently with Assassin's Creed Shadows. But this is arguably worse because we had an extended cinematic, which
really long.
It was extended, which had little relation to the gameplay. We had a short segue from the developers, and then we actually saw the gameplay, which obviously immediately following a cinematic actually looks poor. So it's really not a great way to introduce a game. But the game itself, you're not... It's well known that Digital Foundry isn't a big fan of these sort of live service games. It takes something really special like Helldivers 2 to sort of...
impress us.
Yeah, to punch through.
Like I like Dark Tide as well too, but that's like mainly because they're like doing good things in a gameplay perspective that I find interesting. But like this looked like, we described it as, we can talk a bit about the CGI in a second, but like just gameplay wise, it really looks a lot like Overwatch. And like it really does. It was, other than like the aesthetic being slightly different because it's not Blizzard-y, like Fortnite-y styled, like, Pixar CGI-esque look. It's more like, I don't know how I would describe it, leaning into that like Destiny, like Guardians of the Galaxy aesthetic. I don't know. It just really didn't do a lot for me, even on the gameplay level. I
think so. If you step back, you think about that this kind of highlights an issue with potentially chasing trends. Overwatch was very popular for a while, right? Marvel stuff was still blowing up all those years ago. And to me, this highlights why these long development cycles really can't support trend chasing.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you think about it, like something like Fortnite, it's very popular, right? That got lucky because they were making a different game for years.
Yes.
And then because of PUBG, they decided to take a whiff at this, and they got lucky. I mean, it was not just pure luck. They obviously did amazing. They pivoted very skillfully, but that was not the original plan. Here, it's like, okay, this feels like something where this would have been like, okay, we want to have our own Overwatch-like game. What kind of thing can we do for the themes? Like, well, Marvel stuff, Guardians of the Galaxy's popular. But since that started development, I think like generally people have become tired of Marvel thanks to Disney, just like blowing it out everywhere. I mean, it's still popular. Stuff like Spider-Man's still big. Like, it's not like unpopular, but I think a lot of people are having fatigue for it. Obviously, Overwatch 2 was when they stopped Overwatch 1 basically and went to 2, and 2 was a failure. I think it will find its audience, but so that's a concern there. The Marvel stuff actually genuinely feels like a dude in a suit in a boardroom went to like Chat GPT and was like typed in an AI prompt like, make a game like Overwatch that's like Guardians of the Galaxy.
So you're talking about Marvel Rivals here or Concord?
I'm talking about Concord.
Right. Yeah,
but also
like,
Marvel Rivals.
We're also talking about Marvel Rivals.
Guy.
Yeah.
It'll be a Sony guy.
Yeah. But the reason... so this is tough because you can still see a lot of work's gone into this, right? They've obviously poured a lot of effort into building these characters in the worlds, and I can see some cool stuff there, possibly. I like that idea where they're like, oh, we have like different cutscenes that pop up each time you play, which is a fun idea because like it builds out the characters. But the reason we're so negative, I guess, is because obviously, one, we admit this openly, right? We don't like these types of games. So if you're somebody that's like, oh, but I love these types of games, that's okay. Like, you should know that we don't. So if we say something negative about it, you know that we don't like it. So you can just safely
categorically ignore us.
You can disregard our opinions on this style of game because that's not for us. So the reason it was annoying then is because this was like a slightly over 30-minute, like 35-minute presentation that we knew. We were waiting for stuff. Like half of this runtime almost was dedicated to this thing that instantly didn't appeal to any of us.
And maybe even more than half of the runtime is CGI.
7 minutes was CGI.
Yeah,
which was not great.
So the CGI, well, there's a lot of reasons why I don't think the CGI thing works at all. One, it's like you're spending a lot of money and resources and time, sideways time. It's another studio probably making the CGI altogether. To present something that at the end doesn't look like the game other than visual theming being the same. And, like the character models, the way they move, the way the camera's moving, this has nothing to do with the real game. And I don't know, I guess they're trying to build character at that point, but why not then use the in-game graphics, the in-game assets that already exist and just animate it? It'll be cheaper. It won't look as flashy, but it'll at least be at the proper frame rate the game is at, the proper visual acuity. And so you show the CGI trailer, which, it's at a lower frame rate, but the assets, the visuals are so much higher. And then you cut to gameplay and it just looks like jank in comparison. Like
it looks visually okay.
I said, it's a good looking game.
Okay, but you're basically setting a visual expectation with that trailer.
Yeah.
Which isn't met by the gameplay, obviously, which is the whole, I keep saying it, imagine seeing a trailer for your next movie at the multiplex and the actual movie is nowhere near as good looking as the trailer in any way, sense, or form.
Yeah, and it's something you don't really find in other media so often.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a bad idea, and it's a waste of time for the user. Like, I think also, if the humor doesn't land, which this didn't for me, by the way, then it's like a real drag. So
I'm guessing it's a character-driven game, right? And they were trying to introduce the characters. But that was the method they chose, and it kind of backfired.
And it's too derivative, I think. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like there's a real problem with. I used to love multiplayer games, if you can believe it. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, I feel like after Call of Duty 4. And then other successes.
Changed, yeah.
Everything changed. One, it became focused on filling meters and like leveling up, which I think, this obsession with progression is not something that needs to be in every game. I think there's also issues with just like there's too much focus on like perfect balance, perfectly like fine tuning this. Like that sounds like something you would want, but you look at a lot of the best shooters, it's like they're not actually that super balanced or tweaked, and that's where a lot of the fun ends up coming out of it, right? Halo 1 is not a balanced game at all, but it's a blast to play in multiplayer. And 2 was better in that regard, but it was still early days for that, right? And then I would say Helldivers 2 feels like something that isn't. It felt older, but in a good way, and I think that's actually why it resonated real well, because there's just a lot of silliness and stuff that can happen where it didn't feel like the typical what you would expect from a multiplayer game today. There was a bit of a roughness to it,
right?
In a good way, and I feel like this feels so carefully calculated in a way that just it doesn't. It's hard to get excited about it. Mm-hmm. And if they really did something different that felt fresh, maybe I would be willing to give it a chance.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, so it's.
Yeah,
that's just our perspective, I think.
Yeah, but it's just a shame to see so much of the runtime dedicated to it, at least from our perspective.
Well, that would suggest it's a big bet from PlayStation then.
Has to be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's quickly talk about Marvel Rivals, which is of the similar ilk. Mm-hmm. There's been a closed alpha on PC already, I believe. This is our first look at it on PlayStation. It looks like very similar, really, doesn't
just
it?
With a different perspective, because there's aspects of third person in the Concord game. I was about to call it Condor again.
Well, it isn't. Well, Marvel Rivals is all
it's third person. Yeah. So this is all third person. I think its difference is that it's going to have some sort of, it's using the Marvel characters, so they want that IP.
Yeah, it's got the destructible environments as well.
Yeah, which
this is so cynical.
Yeah, I mean, that can be interesting in its own right from a gameplay perspective.
You'd expect there to be like carnage when a huge amount of superheroes get together, right? And rattle it out.
Looked a little bit tame as a result of that. I mean, I'm all for more destruction in any game and any physical interaction with the environment, which is completely lacking otherwise in the AAA sphere. But it being here, and they didn't really emphasize it a lot. It just kind of like happened as stuff was going on, and most of the focus actually seemed to be on the character combat, and less so what it was doing to the environment. Like I thought the finals was interesting, but one of its issues was that it lacked like character for the rest of like what was happening. Especially you used AI voices and stuff like that, which kind of took the character out. Here, the character is like the primary aspect that everyone's concentrating on, but since I'm not a Marvel fanatic, it really didn't do anything for me, and I don't know, we'll see that one. But it was just like, it's interesting how they have two products in this showcase which are trying to capture the exact same market. Like, these are direct competitors from one another, and they show the games not back to back but close enough that the other one's still in your memory, and you're like, okay.
Well, I do like my Marvel, as you know, Alex.
I know.
And I'm kind of intrigued by Marvel Rivals, and I was interested that they kicked off with Venom. Mm-hmm. And, you saw the symbiote suit doing symbiote things. And then I loved there's like a shot later on where Spider-Man's like swinging into an arc, and I thought that looked great. But then, bizarrely, Spider-Man seems to gain Venom powers. And he's saying things are going to get sticky. It's like,
oh, that's right. I remember that.
This isn't Spider-Man, unless the symbiote suit has come back and it's red and blue this time. It's like, what's going on? That's a bit weird. So, that's kind of sending alarm bells that maybe there's kind of like a set series of abilities that are kind of repurposed for each character, similar to the way Avengers did it.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
again, it just feels like game design by Boardroom. Like you look at everything in there and you're like, this was something that was figured out through research and data, and like, it doesn't, these types of things just don't feel like games that are made just to be fun games. This feels like hashtag product.
John, but what about that PS5 exclusive Spider-Man suit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about it?
What about it?
Yeah.
I mean,
sorry, we're so cynical about these things.
Like
the
a good random
Insomniac
Alex interjection.
Insomniac Spider-Man games also capitalizing on that IP, right? But what they've made is really genuinely great, I think. They make interesting games with it, despite tapping into those IPs, and it feels like they actually they took it and they made it their own thing. This genuinely feels just like an AI prompt game.
They literally created their own Spider-Man to the point where that character has appeared in other media, including like comic books and movies.
Oh right,
yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. Like it's its own thing, and I think that's one of the reasons it's been such a success. It's not just because it's Marvel. Like you can't just say, oh, it's it's just because it's Spider-Man. It's because of what they did with it that made it good, and that's where a lot of this stuff falls down. And this just feels like a Boardroom game.
I think we're going to play it. It's going to be like closed beta.
Oh, we should do it. We should be these grumpy old.
You can do one of your
dudes.
John versus videos.
Oh yeah,
where that'll be fun.
That'll be funny.
Let's move on. Let's talk about God of War Ragnarok on PC. The PC port is coming. It looks like the same combination of Santa Monica Studio and Jetpack Interactive, I believe, doing the port.
Yes.
They did a pretty good job with the original God of War 2018. So the trailer is here. I'd say that, can't really tell too much about the quality of a port from a trailer, but it certainly looks impressive, as did the original game. But Alex, you've got issues. Well, it's more a presentational thing in that, they're trying to sell a PC port of God of War, and literally the only things they can really talk about are the things that they always talk about in a PC port, which is to say unlocked frame rates.
Yeah,
frame rates.
Super ultra wide.
Wow. Yeah, but like, so for me, the thing is, for a PC port or just for a PC game in general, I want it to be more than just basic. Like, the thing is, I always kind of want to have something to be better than just standard or rote. And so advertising things that all PCs games should be capable of anyway is always, to me, like really boring, and just like, it's like advertising the most basic aspect. Like if it said mouse support, I would laugh, right? Something like that. But like advertising unlocked frame rate, of course on PC you should have unlocked frame rates. Advertising ultra wide or even super ultra wide, presumably that's 32 by 9. I would expect ultra wide in a PC port of a game. Advertising 3 different upscalers. Maybe 2 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, they actually have different upscalers. Wow.
They at least put the versions, like FSR 3.1 specifically was mentioned.
Yeah, we'll see that. I mean, maybe that's indicative of the actual FSR 3.1 launch date, because it's the first time we've seen it.
Right.
So, I mean, we don't know about that yet. They don't say, interestingly, they don't mention frame gen, because the version numbering doesn't tell you anything about whether a game includes frame gen, as we all know, because you can have DLSS 3.7, but it's just the spatial temporal. So like advertising those things, to me, it doesn't really excite me at all. But in spite of that, I thought their original God of War port that this studio did was generally very, very good. And the thing is, they also included graphical upgrades over that original PlayStation 4 version and PS5 version. Or PS5, people always get angry at me when I say PS5 version. Sorry, it's the PS5 version running in back compat. They offered things like, SSDO, greatly increased shadow range, which was great, especially for the larger portions of the game. Obviously, the image quality options and the performance. I like those things. And there's a lot of questions about what they would do here, because that original God of War port is DX11. They did it back then just for ease, essentially. Like getting things running on DX12 means a lot of manual labor. But here they kind of are almost going to have to do DX12 if they want visual parity with the PS5 version, at least. The PS5 version uses a very interesting system for reflections that's like they trace into a cube map, which we saw before with Mafia 3, except this time it uses hardware RT on the PS5 to do that. It's like it's a way to use the hardware RT while also not doing something expensive. To keep that parity on PC, I would presume they'd want to use DXR to do that. And that would mean it'd be a DX12 port. But that's interesting because, okay, this is also a PS4 game. How far back can it run on hardware? There's a lot of questions there that I'm very curious about. And would they take the time like they did for the last port, where they added in things like SSDO with like color bleed? Would they instead upgrade those kind of not too great RT reflections to just be real RT reflections? Maybe. I would like to see.
Is it a major engineering effort for those sort of the compromised RT reflections they have? Are they still creating like a BVH?
They still have a BVH, actually.
So it should be relatively straightforward.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, so I think they used like a lower LOD BVH to get just like whether or not something's obscured, and that was the deal. And that's what I recall from the presentation, at least. So they still would be building, some geometry in that BVH. And I think that was an interesting thing. And it's like just one step further at that point. So I'm curious, they did that before with Spider-Man. Nixies did that before, where they already had all these things, this geometry in the ray tracing structure. So they used it for shadows and RTAO and things like that. But obviously, so this comes out, and after the fact, there's a controversy, and I think rightfully so for a lot of reasons, of the fact that Steam page goes up. Also, the Steam page for another game that was showed off in this showcase, Until Dawn, and it's going to be a game that requires PSN login.
Yeah, I've actually got a supporter question about that from Cardinal Whale. Hey guys, exclamation point. It seems like Sony is doubling down on PSN integration for games on PC, and God of War Ragnarök will require an account. That means I can't buy Ragnarök on PC due to region lock, since I live in a country which isn't supported by PSN. Do you think it's a good idea at all to lock a chunk of the audience out of a game? Well, obviously not, right?
No.
I can't think of a single reason why it couldn't be optional for a single player game. In comparison, Hellblade 2 was just released and didn't require any Xbox Live integration on Steam. And all the other games from Sony before Helldivers 2, I can still buy.
Right.
I mean, that is, basically it does seem like an almost sort of dogmatic approach to forcing this integration on people, which is actually turning into an own goal, shooting themselves in the foot by, the whole point of this is to expand out the audience.
Yeah, right. I'd agree with the person, and I feel like it's annoying for those people that live in countries where they maybe want to play this game easily. And the whole reason why it's a problem is, John's talked about before, you can obviously create a PSN account in another country, but you can't buy it through Steam because Steam is trying to protect users essentially from legal quandaries, or maybe Sony is taking it away. You just can't buy it on Steam. That's the whole point. And I think it's...
I was gonna, just as a quick interjection, I only buy Steam stuff from the American store.
The Steam store.
Due to that, the way my account was set up, like I can't even switch it to Germany. So I've just continued to buy on the US store in Germany and never switched.
Yeah.
Save some money though, don't you, John?
Yeah. I'm not gonna switch.
Yeah, but so that's an issue in its own right. I also think it's not great for a single player game, because I think it's great to play games in Steam offline mode. This is questionable whether or not this would allow Steam offline mode. I also think it's great for Steam Deck users. This is a PS4 game. Steam Deck should run it well. Steam Deck does not have the what is it called?
The overlay.
The overlay. It doesn't,
PSN account login.
It doesn't have it on Linux. So the Steam Deck just can't maybe play this game at all. We will see.
We'll have to see whether it is actually optional or not at the end of the day once it actually appears, because
well,
it's kind of suggesting not, right? But to lock themselves out of Steam Deck would be yet another own goal.
Yeah,
that would be stupid.
That would be dumb. But for Ghost of Tsushima, for example, they did mention on the page that yes, single player doesn't require the login, and it's optional when you get in game.
I think that was probably just a reaction to the Helldivers 2 stuff, though.
Yeah,
where they want to be extra clear.
Yeah, but they're not clear here, obviously, or maybe they are. So we'll see all about that, but I don't think it's a good move in general, and maybe it's just a generic move for Sony. The reason why they would want to do this is just to inflate numbers for how many people are logging PSN each month, and also to maybe get more data. Well, I mean, Steam's going to provide them data if they want, but give them more data about who and how you're playing a game with regards to, are you playing it also on PS5?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on. Next title we've got in our lineup is Dynasty Warriors Origins, which is Omega Force, right, John?
That's right.
Back,
yeah,
with a next generation version of their engine, I assume.
I gotta laugh though, Rich, when you were talking about Dynasty Warriors Origins this morning.
Oh yeah,
this idea like it goes all the way back. It's like
to the original
the first Dynasty Warrior is being born, and it's his parents. You just hear the thump thump thump, and then it says like presented by.
The point. Well, logically, the actual point of origin will be the conception of
the dynasty
of the Dynasty Warrior.
Yes.
No, okay. Seriously though, this is interesting because this is a series that it was extremely popular, right? It rose up on PlayStation 2.
Right.
It continued into the PS3 generation, but I feel like they never found their footing on PS4. They tried to go big with was it 9?
Yeah, and it was a performance disaster.
It was.
Oh yeah, it was a performance disaster, and also they tried to do that like they took open world to like the next level. Basically, like remember that game Fuel where you could drive for hours? That's how Dynasty Warriors 9 was.
Right.
Like the world was freaking like you could run across it for like an hours. Basically, it was so large.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm curious to see if that's the case here, but. I will say that technically speaking, at least, even though the frame rate's a bit unstable, it looks It looks nice. Like it looks like I hope that they can pull this off because it started to feel. I guess the formulas continued with all those other Muso games that we've been
Zelda
seeing.
one, right?
There's a lot of anime tie-ins. There's the Zelda one. There's been a ton of these games still being made. But
they did Mechs, didn't they, at one point?
Oh, they did the Gundam.
Yeah, Gundam
series.
Right.
They've done that. It's well worn. There was the Fire Emblem ones, which were pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But like there's stuff in here though in terms of like the types of environments and some of the stuff that happens, some of the physics stuff. Like there's things happening here that looks actually kind of potentially different compared to anything else that they've done before. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering how this is going to end up shaping up and if they can actually really truly deliver, because Dynasty Warriors 9 was their first attempt to like really do something different with it. Kind of, it just didn't really work.
Right.
And I'm hoping that they can pull it off here. It's just a shame that the series has become known for bad frame rates when it started life on PS2 where they were all 60.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting too because like obviously the PS2 didn't have like an amazing CPU or anything like that, yet they were pushing great numbers of units on
exactly.
And then the PS4 version, we all remember that.
The first PS3
Switch stuff.
The first PS3 ones, like the Gundam one, that actually ran at 60.
Yeah.
But then once they started to implement more advanced visuals, it went downhill fast.
A lot of that HD generation stuff. But yeah, this year it's going to be interesting to see how it runs on PS5 in eventuality. It's always hard to comment on any preview footage, but this was kind of dicey in the performance department. But it's also it's also doing a lot of stuff, we've talked about before where like the CPUs in the current gen consoles are good enough for a lot of stuff, but like targeting 60 FPS with a lot of CPU stuff is always hard. Yep. So it'd be curious to see how this runs in the end, given the studio's propensity
you
to
think
not have running games.
Whenever it seems like a series has run out of steam, there's like a reboot, which is basically often the case that they go back to the origins. Do you think this is kind of like a reaction to what happened with Dynasty Warriors 9, where they
Possibly.
thought, okay, this wasn't great,
it does kind of feel that way.
Soft reboot.
Actually, I haven't looked up what the Japanese title is for this yet. Because it's the Shinsangoku Muso series, right? Mm-hmm. But it was always out of step with because Dynasty Warriors was assigned to a different game in North America that was a one-on-one fighting game on PlayStation.
Right.
And so the first Sangoku Muso game was called Dynasty Warriors 2.
Right.
So the Japanese ones are always one numeral behind, right? So Dynasty Warriors 9 was actually the 8th Muso game.
Right.
But now that they've switched to Origins, is it going to be... Like I'm curious to see what they end up calling it.
Yeah, and what the sequel will be. Origins.
I mean, if not for the conception of the Dynasty Warrior, they could also start the game with like a throwback to the one-on-one fighting game.
Yeah, have it be one-on-one fighting game, and then it kind of what's the name of that one Xbox 360 game where the camera spins, and you see like, oh, it's actually real time. What is the name of that game, John?
Is it a fighting game?
No, it's not a fighting
game. What you're talking about?
Wait. It's a Muso style game, but it came out for Xbox 360.
99 Nights?
Yeah, I'm thinking of 99 Nights. But like it starts off looking like a fighting game and the camera spins around and there's 10,000 troops.
Oh, you're thinking of 1 million troops.
Yeah.
99 Nights too.
Mm-hmm.
The famous E3 2010 Konami conference thing.
Do that.
Right, yeah, I was there.
Wow.
It was like I'd taken drugs.
1 million troops. I hope this has 1 million troops in it.
Nah, doesn't need
it. Should we move on?
Yes.
Okay. The next game that we're going to be taking a look at here is Silent Hill 2, the remake. It's coming to PlayStation 5. And we actually had 2 sets of footage for this. We had the trailer that was in the state of play, which... on the night, we weren't particularly enthused by what we saw. And then the following morning, it turns out that on the PlayStation YouTube page, they had posted a gameplay segment. And suddenly things are looking a lot more interesting, right, John?
Yeah, well, they had the Silent Hill transmission thing, which I did not get to see due to timing. I feel bad for the developers in a way on this, just because like tackling a project like this that's so beloved, has such like deep subtleties running through it from a different era, like this was always going to have people super angry. And I'm trying to approach this from a more open-minded perspective, because from my take, it's like this never negates the existence of the originals, right? Like Metal Gear Solid, the Twin Snakes on GameCube, that's not my preferred Metal Gear Solid. But I'm happy it exists. I think it's neat. I think this looks better than that in terms of like, there's a lot of things in here that feel really like they get the original, but then there's stuff where you're kind of like, maybe not. Like it's very mixed, and some of it's weird. It's like when you see the characters, like Angela looks terrible in that initial trailer. Like it just doesn't look right. Like your brain just registers this as like, this doesn't look right. But then in the actual gameplay trailer, just walking around, it feels very atmospheric. The sound design is as you would hope. It feels like it could be a really interesting game on its own. I know Bloober is not especially popular with horror enthusiasts for some of the choices they've made in the past. And it's often a little more heavy-handed versus the more subtle approach. But I think Silent Hill 2 to some degree was almost like I don't want to say happy accident, but like they kind of, what they tried, I think they just happened to just do something really special, almost unknowingly. Like obviously very talented designers there, but like it was the right time, the right place for it. And recreating that is almost impossible.
Right.
Yeah. And I think they will not replace or match that. If you were there in 2001 and experienced it, you're not going to get that experience again. But I think it's cool to see a different take on it, and I at least think it looks like it looks like it could be enjoyable or interesting to go through. And I do look forward to sort of exploring how they've approached it. And from a technology standpoint, at least we can say it looks really good. It seems to be, based on the footage we're seeing, it's the only other Unreal Engine 5 game so far. Besides, Bloober did Layers of Fear, that sort of remake thing of the original in Unreal Engine 5. This is as well, and it's the only two that seem to use the hardware Lumen path.
Right.
So that means like in reflections, like usually with Lumen software, they use like a signs distance field, kind of like a rough mesh. Well, not, it's SDFs of the scenery around you that sort of like roughly represents where you're at. Versus the and then they obviously overlay SSR to get some extra detail. So things like trees lose fine detail on the reflections, right?
Yeah.
Where here it's like you actually retain all of that. It's proper, fully high quality ray traced reflections.
Yeah, I think that's big for a game like this, more so than like a first person game, just because your character is going to be obscuring a lot lot of reflections on the ground all the time. This game's going to have puddles everywhere. There's a lake, right?
Outside anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so like having one of the problems with software Lumen is that when SSR shows up more readily as a result, because there's a bigger discontinuity between the SSR and the reflection. So I think that's great. And I also think, based upon, this is PS5. I think they've only announced PS5 so far.
Yeah. Possibly, yeah.
But I imagine I wouldn't be surprised if this came to PC as well too, given Bloober, and I guess Konami would want
the Bloobs.
That, right? Yeah, the Bloobs. But they're great people there at that studio. They're very nice.
They're so nice.
And so I don't have a huge emotional attachment. John likes the first game a lot, and he's open about this, and I'm also very open about this as well too. And I'm willing to, like, since I'm not married to the original game's vision, I'm curious to see like how good the horror is. There's certain things about horror games that I like. One thing I liked in the trailer, we saw the main character get injured. Is his name Ethan?
No, it's James.
James, sorry. Ethan, I'm thinking of another game. But either James, the character, gets injured, and I was like, okay, does he regen health? What happens?
Right.
No, it's a survival horror game. He picks up pills or something like that. So you're gonna, I like inventory management. I like managing like a health and being a little bit afraid of the environment. They also showed off when the character walks into, is that a hospital? Yeah, like he's avoiding an enemy at one point as it walks by, right? So like, those things are things that I like in a game where you're not forced into combat. You can do it if you want to, but you can also sneakily walk by to preserve health, ammo, and all these other things. So I think that all looks great. And I'm excited to see what they do, and I'm also excited to see when this comes to PC.
There's some like interesting though. The original had loading screens between different areas, which actually contributed to some of the fear. Because when you enter one of those places and just like stark cut, and then you go in and it's like there's something there, and then you would immediately like, turn around and get back out. And there was like there was something to that like break between areas that actually really worked in terms of ratcheting up the tension that kind of got lost whenever they tried to do more seamless worlds. So I'm curious if they can pull it off. Some of the designs, though, I'm a little iffy. Like, I saw the images of Pyramid Head, and I feel like nobody's gotten that right since the original. Because the original, like, that original pyramid shape is designed to be this, like, smooth, almost, like, incomprehensible kind of shape and, like, material, right? And they all, ever since then, they've always had this like ornate, rusted looking thing with bolts and like all this stuff on it that looks more like there's just too much decoration on it. It doesn't
I get what you mean.
Doesn't have that original organic, like unusual, like I can't parse what this is look, which is kind of a shame. But that's been a problem every time they try to bring that character thing back. So that's a bit of a thing. Also, they show Mary in the hospital there, and like they kind of like covered her up in a way that is not good for this game, because she's very intentionally meant to be
provocative.
I mean, she's meant to be provocative, and it's not actually sexy in the context of Silent Hill 2 because it's Silent Hill 2 and everything's dingy and weird, but like she's meant to be that kind of like sexualized character, because it's like that deals with the whole plot and like and what James is going through. And by trying to cover that up in a way, it actually kind of changes some of the messaging and the meaning behind it in a way that I'm like, why would they do that? Like, it just feels like decisions like that were made maybe without...
Who even knows why they would do it? But I understand what you mean. Like, if like whether or not then they keep the exact same visual theming, like if that is literally a part of the plot, like this whole like sexualization.
And it's meant to be kind of like her outfit is almost like very like kind of, you know, like lady on the corner kind of.
That's the whole. It's going
like,
for that.
Yeah, and it's got a look to it, to say the least. I don't want to. For those that haven't played it, we're not going too much into some of those themes and spoiler stuff. Just like I think that's important to the original design and changing that, and I think the faces as well do bother me a bit. Like they just look.
Yeah,
well, I'll tell you what I was thinking about. You know, obviously in the realm of TVs and movies, characters are often recast.
I know,
and there's this sort of sudden disconnect. And probably the most the most remarkable one in history is where the Dukes of Hazzard were recast for a season, and they were literally like supposed to be. They had different names, but they effectively served the same roles. It was like, this looks a bit odd, but yeah, it was the same here. It's like, I think the thing that sort of separates the gameplay trailer from the content that was shown at the State of Play is that you don't actually see the faces that much in the gameplay trailer.
Right.
So that sort of weirdness. It's a similar thing with Marvel's Avengers,
right?
Where you know who they're supposed to be, but they don't look right.
Yeah, it's so weird that it is actually that problem, I think, and that's why it kind of bothers me, because it just doesn't quite look right. And the stuff with Lara, at least on the wall, that cutscene looks really good. But I gotta say, like the gray tone and the look of the world feels really authentic.
I think it looks really great, and this has been historically a problem, I think, with this game, in that it's a masterpiece of visual design. And not just that, it's a masterpiece of visual design for that particular console generation, being played on a CRT display.
Yes, it was made for CRTs.
Whereas, when the HD remake came along, or the remaster or whatever,
that horrible thing,
it just didn't look right. It wasn't right.
No, it was completely broken.
The identity of the game had gone. And I actually think this is like a vast improvement in terms of actually capturing the spirit.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. I'm really looking forward to it.
The only bummer for me is like it comes out on October 8th. That's one day after I get back from Tokyo.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Which means I'm not going to be able to do the normal coverage for it. But
we'll see.
Well, maybe.
I want to do a retro with the looking at the original versus that one when I get back, at least.
Right.
I mean, other than getting the the performance metrics out and all that,
yeah, maybe
there is room still after the fact to do these interesting,
because I really want to explore
comparison.
It and really dig in and see just how it ends up sitting for me. Because I think I could enjoy it. I think I'll have issues with it, but I think it'll also be interesting, and I want to see what they've done with it overall.
Okay.
So I do love that original. I mean, I was a fan of the original Silent Hill, and then I bought this on day one along with Eco. Same day they came out. It was a great day. I played Eco all day, and then Silent Hill 2 at night. And I just remember firing it up for the first time. There's no warning screen about like graphic imagery. It's just this goes to the title screen. There's zero sound. It's just completely silent. And then you just press like new game, and they have the one sound, and then it just starts, and you're just like in that bathroom, and just the way that cold open, and it's just so eerie. And at the time, it's the kind of thing that's really, you can't really recreate that. And even going forward, like once we switch to flat screens, like, and now I think OLEDs and such can deliver the black levels necessary, but like LCD monitors after that, like if you've played this on a PC, on like a normal PC LCD monitor, I would say you've not actually played it. It just it ruins the visuals. It's kind of like Doom 3, where they use so much blackness and darkness that instead you just see backlight. Like the thing about playing Silent Hill 2 on a CRT in the dark, and the way the phosphors on a CRT work is like it can make things look really dim and dark, as similar in a way that your eyes perceive things in a dark room. Like it doesn't like glow brightly. There's not like Oliver level nits in there, right? It's dim. And so you would see things in the game. Like the first time you see Pyramid Head, he's just like, you see the little specular reflection sheen off of his strange helmet down a hallway behind these bars, and you can't really get to it, and you can't really make out what it is. You just see that thing there.
The low fidelity nature of it.
And the low fidelity nature of it like really makes it like it's very unsettling. And I feel like you can't really recreate that in high res on a big screen, and it's just it was very intimate.
Sorry. You lost me with Oliver Nitz.
Yeah,
Oliver level Nitz.
Oliver
This
level
goes
Nitz.
back to our discussion where Oliver went for a new TV based on the fact that it was extremely bright, and basically this morning we passed this massive billboard, and it was enormously bright.
It was very bright.
That would be good enough for Oliver.
We were thinking it might be adequate.
Might
for
be
Oliver.
adequate.
Might be adequate.
Let's move on. We actually had a couple of PlayStation VR 2 games in the state of play. We had Skydance's Behemoth and, intriguingly, Alien Rogue Incursion. And true to form, Alex pointed out, should be Aliens Rogue Incursion, because there's more than one alien.
But also,
with
all the stuff they were working on visually was all stuff from the
Aliens.
set, was from Aliens, like the pulse rifles. And
so it isn't
the
a Game
motion
Pass
detectors.
Games Pass scenario.
It is, and no,
Right.
it could be both.
It could be both.
There's probably more
Right.
than one alien. Xenomorph. Yeah, these I don't have a PSVR 2, but PSVR 2 one. We'll talk about that later. But I thought the Behemoth, however you prefer, looked really like. I mean, visually, I thought it looked pretty okay. But I actually like always things that lean into physical interaction with the environment. And when the character pushed the baddie into a bunch of spikes, I immediately thought of Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, which is a game I have a great.
Was that Arcane?
That is Arcane's first game.
I can't remember if it's actually their first, but I don't think it was. That might not be the first.
It might not be the
But it's
first,
definitely an
but it's definitely
early
the one that.
Yes, they were working on, and then after that it was The Crossing, which got canceled.
Yeah, we talked about that once before in a DF Retro video. But yeah, I thought that looked fun. I'm always a big fan of, like sword and sorcery aesthetic, but darker. Like something like a late 70s or early 80s film might look like, in terms of capturing that aesthetic. And then, just like environmental interactivity and swords and bow. I like the one scene when the character catches the flying arrow towards them and puts it in the bow and shoots it back. That's a lot of fun stuff that you can do in VR and not have it be super awkward. Games tend to like have that in a button mechanic where it's like, it doesn't feel like so heroic, but in VR it can. And I think that works really well. They announced this for PSVR 2, this first game. I don't know if this one is coming to other platforms. I know Aliens is, though, coming to MetaQuest 3, we found out, and Steam VR. So
I'm actually checking Behemoth.
Yeah.
It says MetaQuest for Behemoth and
okay,
Steam
that's
VR.
cool. Yeah, then that's cool. So you can tell us maybe how it is on MetaQuest 3.
I'll try that. I think that'll probably work really well on there. Alien as well. It's interesting. Alien specifically says MetaQuest 3, which is another, like Batman, it's another one where they've decided to drop Quest 2 support.
Right.
Which I think makes sense at this point. like there's a huge Quest 2 audience, but like the Quest 3 is dramatically better
UI.
hardware. But I gotta say, Alien is probably one of the games where, even though the motion clarity on the Quest 3 absolutely smokes the PSVR 2, the PSVR 2 has OLED, so it actually can do that perfect blackness, whereas the Quest 3 uses LCDs and they don't have that. So this would be one I would like to play on PSVR 2. I think it would be really good on there.
Yeah,
there's a lot of potential there. That's sort of like, I mean, obviously the aliens aesthetic with the tracker and everything. That's pretty much made for VR.
It is,
right?
really
Holding that and like hearing things around you using like sort of the spatial sound. That would be pretty unnerving and could be really exciting.
It would be.
I'm very interested to see how those two games turn out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy that they've announced it, but it does feel, I mean, the PSVR 2 situation feels eerily similar to the Vita. Where Sony itself just kind of like,
they've cut it loose.
I mean, at the same time, though, it's interesting that we've now settled into this place where they can release games on Steam, Quest, and PSVR 2. So VR that actually makes VR development a little bit more viable for everyone.
Better. That's what you want to see,
You
and
can
not like
target all the different VR platforms, and that's probably that's what they're gonna have to do. To like make money on this stuff. But Sony itself seems kind of checked out on it. Like Astro Bot, I'm happy it's just a console game, but I feel like there should have been something for PSVR owners, because that's really where Astro Bot got its start. At the very least, like a remastered version of the original PSVR game, just because like it's so freaking good.
Do you think there's the possibility that they might actually have like a subset of levels in Astro Bot for VR?
It's possible.
I mean, we were talking last night that the controller that was actually represented in the game for Astro Bot was the DualSense and not the VR controller.
Yeah.
But while that is true, but Astro Bot 1 was the same.
Oh, right.
Where it uses the DualShock 4, but it actually represented it using motion in the game, and you would like, you'd see them pop out of the touchpad, and they did a lot of stuff with it in the game. Like that was the whole conceit, is that it used the regular controller, but it used it in a way that you'd never seen before. That felt like amazing. Like when you, like in the original, you would like flick on the touchpad to like shoot out like a hook, and it would create like this rope line, right? And then it's attached to your controller, so you move like this and the rope moves with it, and you're walking with the analog stick Astro Bot across it, but you're also controlling this, and you'd actually have to like move the controller with the rope attached while you're controlling the character, and it just felt like it was really cool. Unfortunately, I think that was very VR centric. Like they took advantage of the VR nature, so I don't think you could just like say take the levels from this new game and make it work in VR as effective. Like you could, but it wouldn't be nearly as effective. So but they should have. It would be cool if they had at least some like extra content, or again just like remaster Astro Bot 1, or give something to PSVR users.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty common. It's common to see games moving from 2D experience to VR experience, but like Half-Life Alyx, it's hard to bring down that VR experience, which is based fully on this interactivity with the environment and or objects, down into the 2D zone. It's like pretty hard to actually make the game fun. Then it's like simple at that point when you just have to hit a button.
Still a bummer we never got Half-Life Alyx on PSVR. But I guess if they're bringing PC compatibility, at least
maybe then it happens to some degree with Steam VR. If it is Steam VR compatible.
Because, I mean, good PC headsets are still pretty expensive, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, when you consider that, like if you have a PSVR 2, having a PC, and the PC requirements for Alyx are not that high.
Not anymore, no. How much is it, Meta Quest 3?
The Quest is $550. Same as the PSVR 2.
Yeah, but it offers all this stuff. It's incredible.
All in
I don't want to get in trouble with PSVR 2 enthusiasts again. With my professing my love of the Quest 3. The Quest 3 is the best PC headset, in addition to be its own standalone.
Yeah.
But the PSVR 2 has its advantages. Mm-hmm. The OLED screens are nice, even though that's why the motion clarity sucks. Mm-hmm. Because basically, I guess Meta was able to, because they use LCDs, they can crank up those nits to compensate for the extreme, like however they're handling the strobing of the panels. Mm-hmm. And like even Blurbusters noted that the Meta Quest 3 they basically achieved perfect motion clarity. It is like CRT or better. It's an agreement. It's flawless.
Okay.
The Quest 3 has no blur. Like when you move your head around, anything moves on the screen. It's absolutely perfect.
Remarkable.
But I think if you did that on an OLED screen, unfortunately, it would mean that the image would be extremely dim.
Right.
And which would be okay in VR, but like that goes against Sony pushing for HDR and
Yeah,
in
it just
VR.
it's the other design principle just goes away.
I would sacrifice the HDR for motion clarity.
I mean, like the thing is, if you're already in like a darkened environment, HDR is
your
like,
eyes get used to it. Though.
Yeah, like you're used to the range at that point.
I will say the HDR can be cool on PSVR too. Like when you're playing GT7 and like you get the sun glint on the rear view mirror and it like makes you squint. Like your brain actually feels like, oh man, like this is like driving a real car. Like you actually feel that same effect that you get in real life when the sun peeks through the rear view mirror, and that actually impressed me. So I wouldn't miss that kind of thing, but I would love the option to do like an ultra low persistence mode with dimmer visuals as just an optional thing.
Fair enough. Let's move on. Monster Hunter had a new series entry revealed at the
Not
State
revealed, it was known.
We saw it before once.
Yeah.
Did we see footage before though?
It was like they showed a desert
I
environment.
don't remember if it was
before,
footage
right?
before. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but the game was definitely known.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Anyway, footage.
Anywho.
Monster Hunter Wilds. And I thought it looked pretty good. Exciting stuff, I thought. Obviously, there's going to be some discussions about performance implications based on series history and, of course, Dragon's Dogma. But, you know, Capcom have just been hitting it out of the park this generation generally. And this looks fantastic, I think.
They've produced so many games.
Actually, I mean, when you think about it, the PS3 generation was where Japanese developers really struggled. Where this time, I feel like they're back. Like there's a lot of great Japanese games being made in the past few years versus Western developers, which I feel have really struggled lately with insanely long development cycles and massive budgets and like huge publicized failures. And you have a company like Capcom just like humming along, creating like hit after hit, almost universally great. It's honestly
technology.
It's genuinely impressive. Like what Capcom is doing should not be understated. They are absolutely firing on all cylinders, and yeah, like you said, their own technology, the Reach for the Moon engine, which you know, it has its limitations, but I think overall that's been like a gigantic win for Capcom.
Yeah,
Right.
And it's cool to see this one continue on that. There's some good stuff in this Monhun trailer that they really do good with the secondary motion characteristics on the enemies.
Fun enemy design too. You and I both laughed when the licking toad rock monster came out. I don't know what it was. That looked really fun. I also, you know, I get flashbacks to our Phanta Ray engine times when I see the furry creatures, because I always remember the furry creatures that they showed off for Deep Down. If you recall those.
Oh god.
Deep Down, Deep Cut. So I like this game. I like the, you know, some of the environment. It's very like desertified, rocky environments, which take it or leave it. But I think the monster design is like the core part of this game, and also just having like really chunky, slow animations, which is what the series seems to thrive on. To like its entire combat loop is like this, like you have to wait. You know, you have to be careful with how you actually start your attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's all about that.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
it's the same kind of thing that Dark Souls was built on.
Where it's especially like Dark Souls 1.
Demon Souls and everything. Where it's in a priority and, you know, waiting and wind up times, and it's even more so than that, and it's always been that way.
Yeah. So I guess then we should probably talk about performance just very briefly.
So it's almost like keeping in tune with most of the series history, because most of these games were unlocked frame rates. Like even the first one on PS2 was not. That was like a 30 FPS game. But then like when it came to PSP and other platforms, it was largely, I believe, just unlocked. And that's kind of the same thing we're seeing here, where it's just an unstable frame rate. It was like that in World.
It was
as well, and that's now locked 60 on the current new consoles, obviously, which is nice. But it seems like they're continuing, just like Dragon's Dogma 2, where they're just they don't seem to know how to implement a frame rate cap though, because they added it to Dragon's Dogma 2, but it's the worst frame rate cap I've ever seen. Like it's actually just straight up doesn't work right.
Detrimental to the visuals completely.
Yeah, it completely breaks the frame pacing in a way that's like breathtaking. Like it's so bad, it's unbelievable that they would ship that. But when it's unlocked, it's just, it doesn't feel that stable.
Yeah, it's the same here. It's obviously running.
That's why you
unlocked.
played on Xbox.
For the
because the Xbox has much better VR support, so you actually get the full benefit.
Yeah, so like that's the one thing. Like with Dragon's Dogma 2, before that came out, they
could fix it on PS5 if they did 120 hertz container. But
but like they just don't for some reason do it. It's weird. Like I really wish sometimes we had like really great contact with them, because then we could just be like, I have a really good idea for you guys.
Genuinely, like, please listen to us. Like, what we're saying actually makes sense here, and many other developers I think would agree on this frame consistency stuff. Like, there are ways to mitigate this, and they just didn't take that step,
especially in the VRR environment now.
So
one thing about Dragon's Dogma 2, before that came out, we were like worried about what it would be like on console, just because we could see the performance in the trailers, and we're like, okay, and following the fact that they'd never run capped frame rates in any of their games, even on like PS4 and Xbox One. So like we were worried, and here I would say that same level of trepidation is there, just at least on the console side. We have no idea about PC at all.
Well, this is another great thing about the state of play, which is, as per normal, there was full transparency on what the assets were that you were actually seeing. And I always sort of have to give them a tip of the hat to, when the Concord cinematic came out, it literally said not actual gameplay. Which is almost disparaging in a sense. Could have just said not gameplay, cinematic scene,
but it's honest,
not actual gameplay. It's like, hold your horses, guys. So this was presumably running on PlayStation 5 or a PlayStation 5 development kit. I'm curious, when we're talking about unlocked frame rates about PS5 Pro, what the potential is there.
Depends on where they're
CPU limited.
Because Dragon's Dogma 2 is like heavily CPU bound. So it could be real tricky.
Possibly.
I mean, here, like, the environment's a bit starkly decorated. I mean, it was Dragon's Dogma really CPU bound, just mainly city villages. Right. Oliver found like you can get like to like 50 FPS on like Xbox Series X. Right?
There won't. I mean, there will be the hub worlds here again, but there won't be the cities. Be stuff. Not complicated like Dragon's Dogma 2.
Probably.
If CPU is not the issue, they've got options here. I mean, they use an interlaced form of reconstruction, which isn't particularly efficient compared to other methods. If they've got PSSR,
that ain't great.
Plus an extra, mooted 45% of GPU power,
60 should be on the table. Then,
it should be on the table. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of discussion as once PS5 Pro is officially announced, the implications for existing titles and also for the Pro implementations of new games going forward, which I think is going to be a really interesting discussion for us, certainly. Anything else to say about Monster Hunter Wilds?
We should do a 3-player co-op thing or something for this.
Oh, yeah.
Are any of you guys actually have played the series in the past?
I played Monster Hunter World a bit.
Like really played?
No.
Okay, because they're really fun in co-op. That was when I used to play. I used to meet up with friends at Barnes and Noble on a Thursday night, and we would bring our PSPs and just play Monster Hunter and then Metal Gear Peace Walker.
Right, cool.
Yeah.
On PSP multiplayer, and it was fun. I gotta admit, I have a soft spot. I haven't really played Monster Hunter that much since the PSP days, but it was a good multiplayer game, and I hope this one keeps that up.
Fantastic.
It should do.
So obviously there were a huge amount of games shown in the May 30th episode of the State of Play, and we've been talking for a long time about a lot of them, but we've still got some titles that we haven't discussed, so I guess we should just have a sort of free-ranging discussions on the games that we've not looked at yet. Let's go through them in order. The order in which I've put them down on the docket. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to start with Path of Exile 2, because that actually looked excellent, right?
Yeah, this is cool. Okay, so I've actually played a lot of the original first game, but that was when I was in a different point of my life where I would be like, yeah, I'll grind a character to level 83 or whatever, and this game has an incredibly dense and meta. You can optimize like your character build tree as well as items. The original, it's very famous for that. But I also thought the act structure, like it had like Diablo as well, also has
Diablo,
was really well done. I actually really like the first game, and one of the cool things about Grinding Gear Games is that they run their own technology.
Wait, what are they called?
Grinding Gear Games. They're in New Zealand.
That really grinds my gears.
That's it. I think that was the joke. It was great.
That's pretty good.
But the original game was also like free to play, and you could opt in to just buy the game, and it would give you like, it would only really give you, I think, cosmetics. It was very nice. But like they run their own technology, and I thought actually Path of Exile 1 for when it came out looked pretty great, and it had a lot of really cool effects, and they added to it over time. And now they're running new version of that tech here, and they've had presentations at their like convention that they have. Their TD is a very talented person, and he did a presentation about how they do like global illumination that was very cool. It's like screen space based. And here, showing the PS5 version, there's only so much you can talk about with this little trailer, but it looked a lot like the stuff we've seen on the PC already, and I thought they're doing a very good job visually on the PC and otherwise. So I'm excited to see how this just translates, I guess, to a controller. I do not recall if Path of Exile 1 supports controller on PC. It was, especially, you know, like a lot of the like inventory stuff was very hardcore, but so I don't know.
In this day and age, though, even on PC with the rise of mini PCs, Steam Deck, stuff like that, they're going to want controller support.
I'd hope so, too, for that sake. But this looked good, generally. Very happy about it.
Agreed.
Okay, and let's move on. Infinity Nikki.
Oh, yeah, that was cute.
Yeah.
Actually, that one stressed me out.
Really?
I'll tell you why. Because when I first saw it, I was like, wait, it's like a colorful thing. I was like, oh no, was all the rumors about Astro Bot wrong? And like, this is what they were going to do?
Oh.
Like, I was genuinely afraid that this was going to be the
Astro
Team
Bot.
Asobi game, and that they weren't going to do Astro Bot, and everybody was wrong. And
Those could have been interesting.
But then, you know what? This actually looks pretty cool, I have to say. It's a, it seems to be a Chinese developed game, actually. I'm not familiar with their pedigree, but I'm happy to see some other developers get into the fray, and it has a cute, fun look to it. The environments look amazing.
Yeah.
There's some the characters look a bit strange when they're moving. Like some of the walk cycle stuff was not good.
Yes,
the running stuff was okay. So
yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I can't tell what type of game it is yet, though. That's the thing.
I'm getting,
but I like the look.
I'm getting okay. Like, you know how Pal World is like, you go throughout this large environment and there's a lot of creatures and things like that, and it's about like some sort of like upgrading system. Like it's about like decorating your character. It seemed like there was actually a lot of it about decorating. I don't know. I'm getting like this vibe, like leaning into the open world. You find things in the environment and upgrade stuff. But I did like the aesthetic actually quite a lot.
Could be like a sequel to Princess Maker on the Saturn.
Sure, why not?
I have Princess Maker too.
Okay. Have you made many princesses?
Yes.
Okay.
Good stuff. I liked the cloth physics that they showed off on the character while they were running, in spite of the walk cycle animation looking a little awkward. Curious about the technology, though, because a lot of Chinese game devs we've seen, other than a couple, have been running Unreal. So I'm curious if this is UE5, when they did a really quick pan up over a water, like near what looked like a willow tree in the earlier part of the trailer. There was SSR that was showing, so I don't really know. Maybe not UE5 Lumen hardware, or if it is, maybe it was just bad disocclusion, who knows. But yeah, I thought it looked cool.
Performance looked flawless.
Yeah, which, you know, obviously
nigh on.
So the thing is, if it is UE5, flawless performance at 60 is
open world
rarity, especially in an open world game. So jury's
just wait till
out.
it comes to PC, baby.
Yeah, but then it's gonna have shader stutter and traversal stutter. So who you kidding?
Struggle.
Ballad of Antara also had a very distinctive and appealing look, I thought.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I mean,
hold on. Oh,
I think when we were,
up.
This is the second time we've seen this game. I definitely recall seeing it before, John. Right? We saw this before at a different state of play, didn't we?
Did we? It's an announcement trailer.
Oh, is it? Maybe I'm thinking of a different game that we'll be talking about later. Yeah, but you also did, as you were saying it though, Rich. You said like, haven't we had a couple of these?
Those are pretty though.
These like historical wuxia kind of.
I think
games
the issue is partly down to the format. You know, you just get a procession of imagery thrown in your eyes, and it's like, okay, you know, at some point you get overwhelmed by, you know, can you imagine, for example, Paramount saying, okay, here's all of our trailers for the movies you're going to be watching over the next 2 years.
Yeah, it's different,
presented,
man.
Without context, back to back. They'd never do a presentation along these lines.
See that's why the traditional press conference format was so good, because they bring the devs out on stage, and there was like a proper build up. They would usually give you an idea of like, this is what the game's about, this is what we're trying to do, and that would especially be useful for new IP where you're like unsure what it is, and that they come out, that's their chance to sell it to you, right?
Yeah.
When it's just trailer after trailer with a bunch of random imagery, it's hard to like get excited unless you're familiar with what they're showing and have like already connected to it. But like for stuff like this, I think that looks visually good. It could be very interesting, but it's like it's hard to say much about it because you don't know what the vision is, what they're trying to do. It's just a bunch of random shots. I think trailer format is the problem.
Yeah, but I did get a little bit of a Souls-like vibe though at some points in the trailer. But that's just
better
because
than
there's so many Souls-like
shooters.
games. There's so many Souls-like games that it's just
better than a 5v5 multiplayer game.
It's better than a 5v5 multiplayer game.
Where Winds Meet announced trailer revealed.
This is the other one I was thinking
play,
of
and I think I mentioned at the time, there's certainly been a lot of PlayStation games where it's like samurai dude with sword. And
burning fires in the background.
Yeah, burning. Yep. Cuts to close up of man.
Yeah, it's like something that trod in territory already before, perhaps visually and perhaps gameplay wise. And you said if this was a Team Ninja game, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and that's what I felt like too. But it's made by a different studio, I believe. So, not super keen, but it's nice to see a non-multiplayer focused game.
That's kind of the thing. Is that there was a decent number of good looking games in this. It's just when it's back to back to back, it kind of feels underwhelming at the time.
Yeah.
But in reality, it wasn't bad in terms of what they showed. There was some good stuff there. Just not beyond Astro Bot. There wasn't anything that got me like excited. Even though there was really good stuff in there that I will happily enjoy. Like it wasn't. It doesn't have the magic of the old May, June style conferences, and I'm not sure it was really meant to be a replacement for that, but it just doesn't have that energy.
Yeah.
And man, it's just without the suits, like when they would come out, like Kudaragi's like his African safari suit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Do we need the return of bar charts though? Because there was a lot of bar charts in early PlayStation conferences.
I mean, when they come out with the console war is over slide, that was pretty entertaining.
Oh gosh, I forgot about that, John.
Kaz Hirai definitely had the swagger. He could just come out there
and do that.
I missed those. Those were fun. That was fun. That was a different time.
The final game we're going to quickly talk about, Until Dawn, Unreal Engine remake.
Yeah. So that one suffered a lot from how we watched it, because we were watching a 1080p low bitrate stream on a 768p.
Presumably.
I think it was.
It was,
LCD TV.
Hotel room.
Like
LCD.
The kind of display that made me write off LCDs for years. Like it's the kind where like if somebody paid me like $1,000, I might take it, but that's it. Otherwise, I wouldn't. No, it's insultingly bad. It was a hotel TV. What are you gonna do?
So but like you're saying, we suffered as a result.
It basically made it look like you couldn't appreciate any of the fine details that are probably there in the visuals, and it just ended up kind of like this mushy looking presentation where you're like, is this actually even better than the original?
That's what I said when we were watching. I was like, my mind's eyes putting this very visually close to the original.
That's why I feel like I need to see higher quality media and then go back and compare to that original.
Yeah, and this one's also, if I recall, aren't they slightly changing up the gameplay for this one too? Where it's not going to be so scene based, but you actually move more independently around the environment.
You could move independently in the original.
No, I think it's like does the first game actually have a third person behind the shoulder camera?
No, but it's great because it had fixed camera angles, but like it would move, like it was really good.
Maybe I'm misremembering, but I think this one they said they're going to change the camera style.
Well,
if I recall,
that would suck.
Well, I don't know, but I could also be wrong. But I recall that as part of like the first press release about this, because we learned about this a while ago.
That was one of the major things that made that good, is that they were, because it was 3D, you could actually have cinematic angles and then walk around freely. Mm-hmm. And you don't see enough of that anymore.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think this is a game like a party game, almost like you play it with someone else, like in the room, to make it fun, because it's like kind of campy, right? Sure. Playing this by yourself is not so. It's like when you watch a B movie.
Still fun.
Watching a B movie by yourself is.
Have you played this before?
No.
Okay, so you don't. Okay.
No, but I'm pretty sure that's how a lot of people play this. Like you play it with your friends and you laugh about it.
I think you're right, but The stuff that followed that those guys that made Until Dawn did was more leaned into that, I think. The dark pictures, especially
Man of Medan, of course.
Man of Medan, Tom's favorite
game.
Okay, that's it for the state of play, I guess. I guess that's all we've got to say about that. I think
That is the state of play.
That is the state of play. We've covered literally everything, I think, at that point, which we don't usually do on these sort of
There wasn't
roundups.
that much.
But I guess we should move on to our next news topic. So prior to the state of play, obviously recently we now have two CEOs for Sony Interactive Entertainment, one of which is Herman Hulst, ex-studio director of Guerrilla Games. And what I kind of respect about this is that basically they've come out to explain their cross-platform strategy. And it's kind of put an end to the speculation, but has certainly raised plenty of questions. But yeah, basically they've specifically said that yes, they want to reach more users with their games by porting those games to PC. Live action service games, your Helldivers and your Concords, they will be day and date on PC and PlayStation 5. But for the more narrative-driven single-player titles, they're going to be using what they described as a quote-unquote more strategic approach, where there will be a time period between the PlayStation 5 versions and the PC versions. And remarkably, he sort of made the point that we actually think we can convert PC gamers, quick side eye to Alex, to enter the PlayStation ecosystem because they've sampled how great those games are on their PC, and they may wish to enjoy them on a more powerful or a less powerful system. Quick question here from very professional Dodo. Hello, gents! Exclamation points. Curious to see your opinions on PlayStation 5 games being ported to PC. We have two arguments being made. On the one side, we have Herman Hulst stating that shipping single-player games on PC might attract PC users to PS5 to play sequels, for example. On the other, we have internet forum users stating that PC players would rather wait however long they have to wait and would never buy a PlayStation just to buy a specific game, to play a specific game. In both scenarios, Sony makes money, whether by people buying a PS5 or people buying their games at a later date. However, there's a clear argument that losing exclusives detracts value from the platform, and that brings some risk. Just ask Nintendo, for better or worse. The most straightforward legal way to play Mario or Zelda is if you pony up and buy a Switch. And that has been going swimmingly for them. Thoughts?
Wait, Rich. Based on internet parlance, if you pony up, wouldn't that mean buying a PlayStation?
Yeah.
Well, it becomes... It has a double meaning.
It has a double meaning.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can't pony up on a Switch.
So I'm going to follow this up with some interesting context, which is that people put their own Twitter polls up saying, would you desert your PC for PS5 to play PlayStation games? And a lot of people, I think it was like 75% to 25% no. Then I saw another poll, which was like, okay, are you going to wait to play Grand Theft Auto 6 on PC, or will you buy a PlayStation to play it? And that was more like 50-50.
That's weird, too. It's weird.
Why is it weird?
Because it's one of the most eagerly awaited games, if not the most eagerly awaited.
Most people aren't going to be precious about that and be like, I'll just wait for the PC version.
Well, it's not about being precious. It's more like, I just don't understand like the massive drive because I'm not so in love with the series.
No, I'm actually with you on that, but it's like the best. Isn't it one of like the best-selling games ever? GTA 5?
It is ridiculous how much it's sold.
Like GTA 5 is like a license to print money, basically.
Well, I think they've got a problem
6
here.
will be as well.
I mean, they can counteract the argument to a certain extent that you'd be sort of playing the games on a less powerful system because the PS5 Pro is coming. But at the same time, we know that there's going to be question marks over like
performance,
PC staples, 60 FPS and high frame rate gaming in general.
Maybe they're targeting, like when you look at the most common hardware on Steam surveys, for instance, a PS5 Pro is going to be more capable
blitz like
than
a
any of those.
3060. Yeah, for
right?
sure.
I don't think that when they say that, they're necessarily talking to the high-end PC users, the guys with the 4090s and other high-end stuff in their kit. Like, of course, they're just like, no, they're not really interested in. They're all in on PC, right? Alex. I mean, it wouldn't make sense if you were not in this job, you would not have a PS5 and you wouldn't consider it. Right?
No, I wouldn't know.
But you're all the way in on PC. And I think there's a fair number of people that do play PC games and they have mid-range to lower-end systems that might actually consider that.
Well, I mean, I don't know about that either, just because I think when you're used to a platform, you play it like a lot of ways. A lot of people have mid-range platforms, but they prefer mouse and keyboard and things like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about input and also just like what you do in your daily life. It's hard to talk for other players, but the one thing is, I think that you're hinting at, and that I just disagree with personally, that like it's just GTA to me. It's not like a big driver in my life, but is that has such a cultural like touchstone value for people that they're willing to just drop 500 euros on a console or whatever
100%
to play it because it's, oh my God, I got to be there for the hype. But I don't know if Sony games have that level of cultural pull.
I think Spider-Man kind of does.
Yeah, but not really though, because Spider-Man 2 didn't drive everyone to PS5, right? You know, they just said as a part of this, PS4 is still part of our platform strategy.
But there's still, like,
I don't know.
They've sold pretty much as many PS5s in the same period as PS4, right? Like, so it's moving units about as fast as they possibly could.
Could be, but I'm not convinced that they have the cultural like
not like
weight.
GTA. Nobody has that.
Yeah, so or like Pokemon, for example. That has an immense cultural weight.
But even that I don't think has the same pull as GTA.
Yeah, probably not.
Well, I mean, GTA maybe in other...
For different generations,
I'm not sure about like in Asian countries.
I think it's a big ask to move people away from a platform as liberating and empowering as the PC.
It's not moving away, though.
Well, are you saying it's a complementary purchase,
It's
a secondary games
It's expensive
machine?
complementary purchase.
Well, you know, I'm looking at the Steam hardware survey, and you know, all of the top GPUs are basically console standard or lower. We've got 3060, 1650, 3060 Ti is now the third most popular.
That's a genuinely shocking one.
That is, 2060, 3070, 1060, and then it's like laptop 3060, which 4060 laptop GPUs actually shot up now. That's quite remarkable. 3050, I'd say, there is a sort of performance deficit against the PS5 with a lot of these GPUs. So, possibly, I just don't think maybe there's the volume of games and that would make people sort of transition across that, that PC has. And secondly, there's a lot of people talking about $500 boxes. You can't get the sort of value of a PC from $500, but you've got to remember that if you want stuff like cloud saves or indeed free games, you've got to have the PlayStation Plus subscription. Whereas, PC, no multiplayer tax, you get free games with Epic.
EGS.
Yeah, if you want it. I think it's a tough call. I can see why Sony would make that argument because it's convenient to make it, right? And I do think something has got to give, though, because the concepts, that you're waiting however many years, Tsushima PC, we had to wait a long time for a port. I think that window has got to contract to at most a year.
Yeah. That would be good.
Yeah, because I think you're just losing out on a lot of the marketing that you're doing just from a business standpoint. If you're like, I have no problem waiting for a game if I'm interested in it, because I really just want, at the end of the day, quality, and I'm more interested in that than day and date. But for a lot of people, there is a hype cycle and there's a marketing cycle, and if you're having to do that twice over, maybe you're losing out on potential buyers over time, because there maybe by that time when your game releases that was big on PS5, people are playing Baldur's Gate 3 on PC. They're playing something else. They're worried about something else. You know what I mean? So maybe they're playing the Elden Ring expansion or something like that. They're doing something else.
Numbers though, didn't it?
Yeah, it was like it's in comparison to other multi-platform releases, it's not particularly different. It's actually actually a little bit lower than some multi-platform releases, but it was good within the portfolio of PS5 games. I think it's like second best.
Better or worse if it came out earlier? At the same time as the PS4 version.
Well, that would be 4 years ago. It would have done better.
Probably.
I think. especially at that time, 2020, kind of weird.
There would have been
time.
a big power deficit there between a good PC of the time and the PS4. It would have been marketed as the way to play the game at 60 FPS if it came out the same time.
Yeah,
as the
right. That would have been interesting.
Right.
Yeah, I think I agree with Rich though. Just to like have the games be more successful requires more of that excitement to be held within a certain temporal time frame. But I myself, all I really want is just quality. So I think waiting up to 1 to 2 years is reasonable enough, even though the interest may fade.
Yeah, I think getting it day and date would be pretty tough though for a lot of those games.
Yeah.
Given what we've seen
There,
with
there would be an
Nixies
undoubted
and
quality
Yeah,
issue.
I'm not sure that they could do it.
There's quality
realistically.
issues already at times, right? So like having it be day and date would maybe even require more input from the original developer at that
I
point.
would, I think for sure, because like I think it would be almost unfair to Nixies at that point to have to ship that, just because they'd be dealing with all these like unreleased, pre-release stuff. I mean, they have experience with that; they've done that before, but
Right.
that's obviously a lot of work. Because you're always like you're waiting on the most up-to-date builds to work with and problems to be fixed on the original dev team side.
Yeah, which you have less control over.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we have any ideas of, because Nixis is running out of games to port? Obviously, there's the new titles that are in development that they'll be deployed on. But I'm just wondering if they should go back and do some PS4 stuff that would do really well.
I think that would be cool. They should.
And, there's also, I guess, the opportunity of various PlayStation 4 titles that could also be on PS5 with native versions.
Bloodborne.
Knack.
Yeah, Knack 2.
Knack 2.
I'm thinking like Last Guardian, which is a game that would truly benefit.
From
via
current
Illusions mods, we've seen how it looks on PS5 running
60.
at like 60. It really was quite impressive. So, yeah, I'm kind of curious as to what happens with Nixis next, and whether there'll be like a transitionary period where they are taking the concept of getting closer to day and date, or at least reducing the time window, because they've told us it takes a year to develop a port. That's
Right.
a lot of developmental effort. Well, we don't know the size of the team, but even so.
Yeah, so some of those ports a year though, but I imagine within the engine families, like we've seen with like Insomniac, and now that they have Ghost of Tsushima's engine on PC, and how they also told us in interviews that they're using cross-game libraries to make their development faster, like how they do dynamic res across all games, how they do ultra-wide support, how they do a variety of things.
Right.
Actually, like they're building libraries that are making this quicker all the time.
That's cool.
So yeah, maybe they are capable of it. Maybe they require more staff. Maybe they require different funding. It really knows. But I would like to see it shrink for sure.
Okay.
Though I think that at the end of the day, the real reason is because probably Sony's a little bit afraid. I don't know how justified it is of people moving to PC if they bring it closer to day and
I think
date.
they are actually afraid of like sort of deprioritizing the console.
Yeah, going back to the God of War trailer that you weren't happy about, Alex. If you have within a Sony State of Play, an advert talking about how great the PC is doing features that the console can't do, there is a disconnect there in terms of the marketing message, right?
Yeah.
But I honestly think there is a clear delineation between a games machine that you set up and it just works. That's primarily maybe in the living room or in a bedroom or an office, and then the PC side. Well, obviously there's crossover with the office, but it's a different style of setup.
Yeah.
I do think they can peacefully coexist, but at the same time, I guess the concept of exclusivity does have value, and I do think possibly there has been some diminishment of that on Xbox by being PC simultaneously.
Yeah.
I think it was more the fact it takes time for the ports to get good on PC on the Microsoft side. Halo Infinite was a bit of an issue, more so than the console. Even Forza Horizon had issues at launch.
It's hard with Microsoft, right?
And I can't speak to whether it's hard to say what kind of an impact it actually had, but I can say anecdotally that I don't, besides you guys, I don't have a single friend or know anybody that owns a Series X or an S, like not even one. And they all had Xboxes in the past, but literally every one of them says, well, like, I just have a PC. Like, why do, like, they have the other consoles. all of them have other consoles, Switch and PS5s.
Right.
But nobody got an Xbox because they felt it wasn't necessary.
Well,
they kept their old Xboxes around, but then since they just switched to PC, and I'm wondering if that's actually a common sentiment where they're like, well, we don't really need the Xbox hardware because we can just play these games on PC.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
The difference there, though, is Microsoft they have Windows, right?
Yep.
If Sony did that and the same thing happened, they've got nothing to fall back on.
Right. I get your point.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you can at least get into Game Pass, you get into the Microsoft Windows ecosystem. Like, even if it's not an Xbox console, you're still like, you got your foot in the door with Microsoft. Where Sony, they would not have that at all. It'd just be like, well, okay, I guess you go to Steam, which is not our platform.
The platform may be diminished, but obviously Microsoft isn't losing money in making a console for those people.
But I think Microsoft's the only one that can afford to do that.
Right.
Because they have this, because of the way that they're set up, they have strengths and advantages that Sony and Nintendo don't have. Mm-hmm. And those guys need to make sure that the consoles are still like an appealing prospect.
Yeah.
In a way that Xbox doesn't really technically need to do anymore.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like with Xbox, it's also hard historically to like separate. Well, I actually don't think it's that hard to separate. Maybe where we saw the massive failure of the Xbox One at launch, and I almost feel like they had to go to PC to start being profitable in a good way, or that's where they started the initial inroads with that, where we saw the Remedy game. I forget the name of it, Quantum Break, being the first, along with Gears of War remake. I forget the name of it, but Ultimate Edition, where they were moving over to PC, and it was just because like they needed to start going PC because their Xboxes weren't selling, the games weren't going to be selling as much to justify the budgets that were being given out, and that's when it kind of started. So it's hard to like say which one is the other, chicken and egg, but I think it was actually more like Xbox needed to start branching into PC to be successful again, and it worked out more or less. But their quality issues has always been an issue. Unfortunately, Halo, you just said Halo Infinite.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, so this week it was announced that Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is coming to Game Pass. It'll be their day and date on launch day. A lot of controversy about whether this would actually happen, owing to the gigantic financial outlay that goes onto any given Call of Duty game. There's been a lot of controversy about whether this is essentially hobbling the franchise in terms of being like this massive moneymaker. And but no, Microsoft have come out. They've unambiguously stated it's going to be launch day. You'll be able to play Black Ops 6, which is very, very interesting. Now the discussion has moved on to, well, are they going to hike the price of Game Pass? But even so, we've got this question here from Tamarator. Hi, DF gentlemen. Do you believe that the Game Pass model is sustainable in the long term? We're already seeing video streaming services racing to the bottom, and videos are cheaper and easier to produce compared to games. Do you think it's a good strategy for Microsoft to put all of its eggs into the Game Pass basket? Interesting question, right, John? Because I don't think it's a question of whether they could afford to do it, because they can afford to do it. I'm not even sure it's a question of sustainability. It's a question of growth. They need to be bringing in Game Pass subscribers to actually justify the fact that they just spaffed $70 billion on Activision Blizzard King. What do you make of this whole scenario? I mean, it's potentially great, right? I mean, you were talking on Twitter the other day. Sorry, X. No, Twitter.
What? No, Twitter.
You were talking on Twitter the other day that, you love the campaign when it's good.
When it's good.
When it's good. And you're not so enamored with the multiplayer. So, it is typically a short but sweet experience.
Yeah.
And now, you just get to play it on Game Pass, and that's great. But
yeah, I used to... I would usually wait and purchase it like on a sale or something, usually after launch, of course, just so I could play the campaign. Because I can't justify full price for these games because I don't play the multiplayer really. But I do enjoy this big dumb campaign sometimes. They can be fun, especially something like Infinite Warfare was really good. That might have been my favorite campaign in the series. But last year was not so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is actually personally good for me because it is a way to get what I want out of this series without having to pay extra for it. Basically, it's just like part of that. And it's such a big series that I don't feel bad about it either. Like usually if I like a game that's on Game Pass and it doesn't feel like it's been a huge hit, I would rather just go buy the disc version then.
Right.
Like I mostly use Game Pass these days as a method for sampling games to see, do I like this or do I not like this? I don't like to commit to play through games on Game Pass much, because I've had cases where I would start something and then, like a long game and maybe put it down for a while and then I come back and it's no longer on the service. And then I feel irritated by that, and I just don't want to think about that. So if I really like something, I'm just going to buy it. But in this case, these are short. It's one and done kind of thing. So I'm happy to just jump in there and play through it in a couple afternoons and have a good old time. I'm curious to see how, like you said, I think Microsoft can afford this, but do they want to? Because a lot of the moves they've made lately make it seem like the management above Xbox is suddenly like, okay, you guys need to make money now. Like really make money, like proper Microsoft money. And
yeah, I mean that's kind of been the sort of messaging that we've kind of inferred from comments from Satya Nadella. So yeah, it has been announced that Phil Spencer is going to be having an interview at IGN Live, which is like next week. So we're actually this is actually an opportunity for Microsoft to come out and overtly address stuff like why Tango Gameworks and Arcane Austin were shuttered. What is the deal with Game Pass? Is it all financially sustainable to bring in, games from a $70 billion acquisition onto a subscription service? I think, there's a lot of dimensions to Call of Duty and its revenue streams that we're probably not thinking about. The obvious one. MTX,
yeah, that makes a lot of money.
Yep. And the fact that, the PlayStation owners, I don't think they're going to be buying an Xbox or a PC to play Call of Duty. They'll just buy the game.
Like they've always done before.
If they have a PC, they might get the PC version on Game Pass, maybe. But
yeah, possibly.
I think it'll see maybe a small uptick in Xbox sales, but probably not like huge.
I think the key indicator, which, it's unsure whether we'll get any sort of numbers at all on it, is the uplift to Game Pass.
Yeah, no, that'll be interesting for sure. That I think, man, it almost feels like it might have a bigger impact on Game Pass for PC, because the thing about Call of Duty is, like, I think most people that play it are in it for the multiplayer stuff, right? And they're there because they're playing with their friends on their platform of choice. So Xbox gamers are going to keep playing with their Xbox friends, PS5, PC. They're sticking with the crew that they play with, I'd imagine, and they're just going to play wherever. So on PC, I could see more people being like, well, I'll just, do the Game Pass thing then and just do it that way. Same on Xbox. And then I don't think PlayStation users would necessarily convert. They'll just buy it as normal, one would think. I assume Microsoft would like to find a balance of, like, yeah, they see a big uptick in Game Pass subs, but then also plenty of people just buy it at full price anyway.
They kind of win either way, maybe. You know what I mean? Like they get you in there.
The question is, though, is like these games are so expensive to make. And I know Microsoft can technically afford it, but is Satya going to want to fund all this? Are they going to be able to make up for that with the sub stuff? Like, can they actually reach the number of subs necessary to offset this?
Mm-hmm. They've got to basically justify the investment. That's the bottom line. There's got to be a substantial increase in Game Pass subscribers to actually say, right,
that,
okay.
And the MTX stuff needs to do as well as you might think it would. Like, there needs to be, there's all those different revenue aspects, I guess, that come into it. But is the problem with this, I guess not problem, the risk is that if the strategy doesn't work and they realize this is not sustainable, you kind of can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? If you're like, okay, no longer on Game Pass going forward, that's not going to work. That's going to make people very angry. And so I feel like they're taking a big shot here. And if it doesn't work, that could be troublesome for them.
Interesting. Yeah.
Anything else to add, Alex?
No, I was just thinking about the genie back in the bottle. I can't think of an instance when they've done it back on console, but on PC, they got rid of games for Windows Live. And I'm just thinking about like moments where Microsoft walks back on what they've done in the past in an obvious way. And they walked back the Xbox One launch to a degree.
One funny trend I call that I was alerted to is apparently after the release of Forza Motorsport last year, it was largely viewed as disappointing. Sales and prices, in fact, of the physical version of Forza Motorsport 7 went way up because that game's been delisted, can't buy it digitally, can't get it on any service. Forza Motorsport was considered a disappointment, and then everybody's like, well, I guess there was suddenly more demand for Forza 7 and people wanted to get it, and the only way to get it is the disc. If you didn't already own it digitally. So like I thought that was I thought that was funny. Just that path ended up occurring where it's like the price of that game is now going up a bit because of that, since they've so heavily moved away from discs in general.
Yeah, we'll see. Will there even be a disc Xbox version? Do you think?
Of what?
Of Call of Duty?
Of Call of course they absolutely will. Oh, dude.
Yeah.
That's one I don't think they're going to abandon the disc just yet. The only thing, though, is if the digital Xbox happens, and what if every Xbox on store shelves when this game ships is digital only?
Yeah, that would be a bit rough, wouldn't it?
Because that's Series S and...
Becomes... That's a real
problem.
Well,
I'll tell you what. Remember the white all-digital Series X that looked just like the normal one? We still haven't seen that.
Yeah, what happened to that?
With the adorably all digital, maybe it will be revealed at the showcase. Maybe it's been canned. Maybe they'll just carry on. I'm not sure they're going to just disregard a reduced version of an Xbox at this point. They need to reduce the cost.
To do it.
Yeah.
The Xbox showcase, obviously, we'll get to see Black Ops 6, so that it's got its own part of the show, developer _direct. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm just thinking more about the disc stuff, though. I really feel like, even though I know they want to get away from it, like I feel like it's not a good idea because for specific big games, there's a subset of the market I think that will still want to go disc. And I look at games like Grand Theft Auto 6. If you walk into a store and every copy's PlayStation 5, and that's it. There's not a single Xbox copy because there's no physical media. I do think that it actually will have an impact. It's not good for them.
Yeah, I guess but it's also tied into like consumer spending and where you go. We just talked about earlier about malls dying.
Oh, I know,
in the United States. That was funny.
That's not the case in Europe.
Yeah, not here. No, definitely not here. If you go in a store here, the line of the Sony branded GTA 6s is a huge mindshare difference.
Yeah.
I think also at the showcase, we've got to surely see something happening on Games Pass with legacy Call of Duty games.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they just
it
dropped
would be
a bunch of Call of Duty games.
Fantastic to see. You were talking about the Infinite Warfare campaign. Infinite Warfare is one of those games that just
underappreciated
and basically sort of was horrendously received at the time simply because of the concepts. Remember the boots on the ground debacle?
Yeah, oh my God.
That was a great campaign. I really like all the campaigns.
I even played, that was one of the only years I actually played multiplayer as well, Infinite Warfare. I thought this sci-fi twist to it really actually made it pretty fun. And for me, even as not a normal Call of Duty online player, I was really sad to see them move away from that. That was awesome.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about supporter Q&A, which is the part of the show where every week I do a post on our Patreon saying, hey, suggest topics, suggest questions for inclusion in the next episode of DF Direct Weekly. Our supporters never disappoint. Some great questions this week. And we're going to kick off with a question from Joe Doyle. What games do you see as the potential launch games / reasons Sony will tout for getting a PS5 Pro? And this is a tricky one, right? Because obviously there's no tentpole mega franchise juggernaut this year.
Maybe
we've got Astro Bot, which I think is going to be a fantastic showcase for the PlayStation 5 Pro, in the same way that the Astro Bot game that was the pack-in.
Maybe RT in that one, ray tracing.
I would say the tent pole that they're going to bank on is something like Ghost of Tsushima 2.
What, out?
Not necessarily out, but I bet it's closer to release than we think.
Really?
I don't know if I don't actually know anything on this. I'm just it's you look at when the last one was released. They've been hard at work on this for a while. I would not be surprised to at least see that game revealed alongside the PS5 Pro.
Right.
And then maybe ship sometime early next year, possibly.
Okay.
Because to me, that feels like that would be a great showpiece title for them and something that they would we've kind of been waiting to see what they're up to, and they've been very quiet since the release. And there's at least no reports of like the Naughty Dog situation with the canceled multiplayer stuff. Like we can just, the Sucker Punch has been pretty efficient with their development. And
we've not seen anything from Ben's studio for literal years.
That's a shame, man, because Days Gone was really, I think thankfully Days Gone is now appreciated.
After its PC launch, it was really
at the time but they actually did some cool, risky new things with open world formula that shook it up in a way that was good. Like specifically you can't just go off in any direction because you have to worry about fuel and supplies, and like it actually felt like a journey. It's like, oh no, I ran out of gas. I got to go off on foot and get the supplies necessary to continue. That stuff's cool. I liked it a lot.
Mad Max style.
Yeah. I hope that. I have not heard anything from them, of course.
I think we'll see maybe a version of Gran Turismo.
Oh yeah, I assume that they would do. I mean,
a patch.
Yeah, ray tracing.
They're already at the. Oh, that would be the ray tracing, because right now you can already get native 4K at 90 to 120 FPS with VRR, which is really great. And so like they're already really high fidelity wise, and I feel like this is the perfect time to like basically enable ray tracing features in gameplay, and also take advantage of the PSSA or whatever.
PSSR.
Yeah. The pisser. Sorry.
Take advantage of that. Maybe, improve image quality, add in real-time ray tracing in the gameplay, and it's going to look stunning. I would imagine they would want to do that.
Yeah.
That feels reasonable.
And also there's they could show it off for the first time as the rumored Horizon Zero Dawn remake.
Oh,
right. And watch this space. They probably have like RTGI planned for something like that, I would imagine, with a PS5 Pro version. I can see that in my brain. Obviously, we've talked about whether or not this is a necessary thing at all in the past number of times, but that could be another thing to show off to like whet people's appetite about this console in general. And but it comes out later, obviously.
I wonder if we still don't know is the price approach to this, and I don't know if they can feasibly do it because we know the cost of trying to, just die shrinking, and none of that's necessarily enough to reduce so easily from what we understand, right? But if they could, I feel like the Pro could make a big splash if they're able to get regular PS5 down to like 400 at least, with the distro, like the full PS5 $400, PS5 Pro 500. The same year, like GTA, or like within a year of GTA 6, and like the PS5 is finally gets a price drop, and I feel like you have also the Pro option, and then it becomes kind of a. I feel like that could work well, but if the Pro comes and it's like $600 and the regular PS5 is still 500, I feel like that's not going to land very well.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I think the question is basically more about how they're going to market this thing at launch and give reasons for justifying its very existence, and they need to come out strong. And this was exactly the issue that there was with PlayStation 4 Pro, where we kind of didn't really know what a 4.2 teraflop machine would do, except that it's like a very underclocked RX 580, which wasn't really exciting at the time, but they did actually come out with a good show. But they've got to repeat the trick. I think they really need to talk about the benefits of machine learning. They need to deliver palpably different experiences, improved experiences on existing games, and they've got to look ahead to the future to say, and this is coming, and it's awesome.
Yeah. I would love to do a shot, and you see Mark Cerny come out, and he's like, okay, if we zoom in here on this arm of a man swinging a lightsaber in Star Wars Jedi Survivor, you can see the pixel break up here. This is the result of AMD's FSR2, and using our new technique, and they wipe it away.
You want him
perfect clarity. He's not gonna slag off.
To declare war.
He's not going to declare war on AMD.
They're gonna do it. They're gonna show partners. It when they show off any comparisons. It's going to be first party titles, but once again,
that would be so fun.
The original PS4 Pro stuff that you saw, Rich, third-party titles were also part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You saw Shadow. You saw Infinite Warfare.
Mass Effect.
Was it
Andromeda.
Infinite Warfare?
Infinite Warfare was there. It was looking a bit dodgy because, well, they do massive optimization pushes right into the last minute, and it actually shipped looking really great. But the trailer they had was in the 40s there.
Yeah.
But, they're good stuff. For Honor
did
from
it in the
Ubisoft actually looked 4K, which was pretty great.
Yeah,
They had Marvel Spider-Man assets there that looked great on a 4K
that's
screen.
Right.
They had Mass Effect Andromeda with like HDR, and because obviously the Pro was like the introduction of HDR as well.
Right.
They had that fascinating Uncharted demo, which wasn't actually running that great, but I think it was likely running at a higher resolution than the one that they shipped
shipped
with.
it.
They just went 1440p.
In the final one, actually, you can tank the frame rate
Right.
on PS5, PS4 Pro. If you get alpha effects too close to the camera, you swing it in through the right thing, you'll see it like crash down.
There were some issues with the
very briefly, and then
yeah.
it pops back up.
There were some issues with the 4 Pro launch where PS4 Pro games are running less capably.
well.
Yeah, Watch Dogs 2, I think, was one of them back from
Yeah,
This
that was
is true.
troublesome.
So, yeah, I think they're going to come out all guns blazing with patched updates and with strong hints about what they're going to be doing. And maybe they'll tie, as you say, a Tsushima 2 running on PS5 Pro. That would make people
Thinking
excited.
back, though, like some of these checkerboard implementations, I actually think like the way Infinite Warfare looks, for instance, I think it looks better than like what we've seen with like FSR2 running on consoles with these like really low res. Like,
yeah.
like I genuinely think some of the checkerboard stuff was better.
Yeah,
It's sharper. It doesn't have that horrible fizzle everywhere. It's just like the artifacts of checkerboarding like were not nearly as distracting. They were harder to see from a distance versus the artifacts of FSR2.
Okay, interesting. Let's move on to our second question. This question comes from Alexander Seidel. Do you think Nvidia will introduce another hardware-reliant software feature with the 5000 series? And if so, what is your guess as to what it would be, Alex?
Oh my gosh.
I don't think they will.
I mean, I don't.
I think there'll be features. I think there'll be strong features. I'm not sure they'll be reliant on RTX 5000 because it doesn't feel as though we've had time to live with the 40 series cards yet. And if you go back, there wasn't so much with Ampere. Ampere was a performance play and a value play. And it was basically establishing everything that they'd achieved with Turing. And I think they need to do that this time around. So I'm not sure there's going to be a push for features that are entirely reliant on 50 series silicon. But I do think there will be features that will probably run great, better than 40 series possibly.
Yeah, I think for the market's sake, it would be great if they it was Ampere-like in the fact that it was reducing prices in a certain category, or made just people happy to buy something instead of maybe begrudgingly buying something. I think that'd be good for them and for consumers, of course, too. The areas where I think semi-realistically, where I think NVIDIA engineers would not be just die shrinking and making things faster, would be within RT. And I think there could be new accelerations there that occur that are just baked into the hardware that don't require explicit API support to take advantage of. I also do technically think in the background, Microsoft is going to be updating DXR at some point in the future. And there could be forward-looking features regarding that, but they'll take a long time to trickle down, just like DXR took a while to get into a number of games. So I think that's something that could potentially occur. One thing that we've talked about before on the here on DF Direct is that we do imagine in the future that NVIDIA would potentially allow more interpolated frames to be added in. That could be something that is limited to future hardware just because the processing cost makes it possible, because there's a processing time there that affects input latency and as well as the frame rate.
That would be killer for some of those like 480 hertz monitors and the really high refresh rate monitors,
or the 1000 hertz
monitor,
right? So so I think there's potential there, but there's also things like behind the scenes that we don't have a good knowledge of at all. Like NVIDIA surprised, I think, a lot of people with some of the features they've done in the past.
Yeah.
So because they have their own vision internally that they then, after years of research, bring to the market. And they probably have teams like that out there. Like, did anyone expect RTX Remix? It's not limited to a certain set of hardware necessarily.
So cool, though. I love that stuff.
But, I think we could see more of that stuff that is NVIDIA specific, or maybe not, but it's just like, we're pushing to the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what they've come up with, but I do think that, introducing new features every generation, it's a tough call, and you don't want to annoy people about the brand, right? Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Yeah, I mean, it's just an interesting question because we kind of predicted that frame generation was coming for two reasons. First of all, I think we just floated the concept you floated the concept on Twitter, and Brian Catanzaro you pointed out a paper for Nvidia,
yeah,
and Brian Catanzaro just sort of said, yes, that research was really good, wasn't it? And then we met up with Tom Peterson, TAP at Intel. And it's just like, we sort of raised the possibility of frame generation. He just went straight for it and just basically essentially confirmed that they're at least strongly thinking about it. But it was, I think, nicely surprising that it all happened immediately after that. But this time, there. I don't think we can come up with any sort of new concepts that has been hinted at, signposted.
There's one recently, so a year ago, they put out this paper about neural compression of textures,
right?
Going beyond the standard formats. It had a processing cost, of course, and it was originally demoed maybe on a 3090 or 4090. I really can't remember what the initial demoing was on, but the concept was really interesting to increase the quality of textures without hitting on memory and bandwidth. And then they most recently had a paper that came out about how do you actually filter those textures, because hardware texture filtering won't work on it after this point in time. Right. So they came up with a new method of filtering that is actually better than standard filtering in a number of ways. And it's very interesting, and it leans on DLSS to work to a certain degree. Maybe they do something with textures. Maybe another thing. Maybe they'll actually have hardware decompression instead of relying on G-deflate direct storage decompression.
Right. But these are all features that are nice to have, but these are features that a current GPU could do. I would say it's not, you're not going to, when 40 series came along, it was frame generation, and this is really an interesting feature, and it's going to sell cards, right? I don't think we're looking at features quite like that, as transformative as that they can actually sell.
Right, yeah, and also the question of integration into games. Frame gen was easily integratable in comparison to other technologies like path tracing, so we saw that uptick, and it made it a real compelling buying thing. It also annoyed people that had 3090s or 3080s, and they're like, why can't I use frame gen? FSR3 comes along. So yeah, good points.
Okay.
I think the big feature though they don't have that I'm really excited about, I want 5-slot GPU. 5 slots.
It's funny because me and Alex were talking about the return of 1-slot GPUs.
Nope.
There's no reason why a 4060 couldn't be a 1-slot product.
None.
But no, you want to go bigger. You want to go wider.
We go wide, boy. They can make it short, but 5 slots. Like a chunky board. Multi-layer PCB.
Have you seen that PCB of the 4090? It's already half-sized anyway.
Yeah,
it's just increase the width.
Yeah,
exactly. Wow, that would be awesome.
Just go all the way.
You could put a fish tank in your PC.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. 5-slot, baby.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. That you're going to love this one. This question's from Gimme More Frame Rate.
Okay.
And he says, hi, DF crew. I have a hypothetical question. If Hellblade 2 had arrived in late 2023 and had made the cut for DF Graphics of the Year video, how would you guys have ranked it in comparison to your 2023 graphics top 3? The top 3 being, of course, Phantom Liberty, Alan Wake 2, and Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. I could already see Alex is kind of like a semi-facepalm there.
Yeah. I don't know. they're all achieving very different things, and that was one of the reasons why we had a hard time between Avatar and
This makes it even harder, I'd say.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I am enjoying the graphics discourse on Twitter to the point where the Twitter channel Delusional Takes
Yes.
had that shot of Aloy's ear from Forbidden West and Senua's ear from
I
Hellblade
don't
2.
know.
It's like, clear PlayStation win. PlayStation wins again.
I couldn't even figure out what they were looking at though. Like what specifically
What
did
was
they
the
see?
wind? Yeah.
What was the point of that picture that made them say
Possibly an ear fetish.
Yeah, it was definitely
creepy.
it. Ooh. So, for me personally, to use that phrase, which I just like, but I use it all the time. For me personally, I really enjoy interactivity in graphics. So I'm really fond of like systems game design. So I do lean towards things like Avatar in a certain way rather than like really artistically driven like single room experiences to a certain degree. So that's why I'm always interested in things like that. Avatar had like these like, like wind simulations and like broken terrain, and you can like shoot stuff up, and the ray traced audio. I was very intrigued by all that. So I kind of still always lean in that direction of like, okay, so the graphics are pretty, but what can you do with them is my question. So I always kind of lean towards interactivity.
There's always a certain degree of the game and how it interfaces with the visuals. I mean, Avatar is just like a glorious game. You're not only seeing these amazing visuals, you're actually feeling like you're a part of that environment.
Yeah,
the
that
interactivity
world.
with the environment, the traversal mechanics, it all combines to enhance the quality of the experience and dare I say it, the quality of the graphics to be actually part of that environment.
That it do.
And I don't think Hellblade reaches the same heights. I mean, when we first booted it up, I sort of said to John, it's been a while since I've seen invisible walls in games.
to that degree.
From that perspective, then I think it's a better comparison to Alan Wake 2.
It is much better compared
Those
to
are
Alan
very
Wake 2.
similar.
Yeah.
And
So Avatar, okay, we've established, I think, that Avatar remains at the top. But
Just for me, at least.
2 and 3, though, with Avatar, it's much more comparable with Alan Wake 2.
if we're talking console version of Alan Wake 2, then Hellblade 2 bests it easily.
I would say it beats it too.
If
in
we're
terms
talking
of that.
PC Alan Wake 2, it gets a lot more complicated.
Because of the path tracing?
Yeah, the path tracing, even though it's not, it has its limitations, given that it's still like at its core like a rasterized traditionally game. But I mean, Hellblade's character models and like the quality of that stuff is that is better than Alan
look
Wake,
at that ear
for sure. That ear,
yeah.
I think that's a step. I might have to go with Hellblade over Alan Wake 2 overall, but I'd have to say it's a tie if we're talking PC Alan Wake.
That's hard.
I don't know if we can't really do a tie, but I'm just going to do it anyway.
We could probably do a tie one year and just really annoy everyone.
Because I think Hellblade 2, it's really up there. And hey, at the very least, Hellblade 2 is obviously going to be hot in the running for this year.
Yeah.
Based on what we've seen so far, I would give it
this
graphics
year,
of the year.
especially like
For 2024, it is currently my graphics of the year, but could it change? We'll see.
We still got releases to go.
Okay, let's move on to the next question, and I'm going to go to this one from Daniel Tobin. Hi, DF team! ! As a self-proclaimed lover of both LCD screens and game streaming, John. I was hoping John could offer some best practices and settings for Quest 3 Airlink. While latency and stuttering are not an issue, image quality is. Darker scenes, especially in a game like Beat Saber, can turn into a mush over the Airlink.
Really?
I've tried increasing the bitrate, but that made little to no difference to my eyes. Is there any hope for us wireless warriors? Or are confounding cables the only way to stop the smear? I don't know about the question, but I love the way it's written.
Yeah.
Thanks, ! You don't really have an issue with...
I don't have an issue.
Have you played Beat Saber?
No. It's the only one I've not played because I don't...
Is it literally just a plug-and-play experience then for the Airlink?
So there's basically 3 ways to do it, right? And I've had different... So there's the built-in Oculus Quest connection. Right? That, in my experience, is actually the worst. I've had the worst image quality from it, and I get some weird jitters with it, so I don't really use it. Then there's virtual desktop, which has, in my experience, been the best.
Right.
Like that's really clean image quality. It's super reliable and it looks awesome.
Is it? So there's actual image quality differences.
Yes.
Is there motion quality
No,
differences?
the motion quality is the same usually.
Right.
Although
No
I get some
stuttering
more.
or
I got a little bit of stuttering sometimes with the Meta
Right.
one, or that I didn't see in Virtual Desktop.
Okay.
But only in like they were both mostly smooth. Half-Life Alyx had some weird issues with the Meta one versus Virtual Desktop where it's flawless for me. The difference more is like the built-in one had like a softer, almost like over sharpened look to it, whereas the Virtual Desktop one looked like just native HDMI like input to my eyes. But then the third one is the Steam Link that they added recently,
Okay.
and that one's kind of falls in between. It looks really good, but I found like I had a little bit more stutters in it. Even on a simple game, like I tested Half-Life 2 VR, and that was my test bed for looking for fluidity. And there I
Right.
would get these little tiny, occasional little hiccups. Like they're pretty small, like probably like single frame, like little. But in VR, it's like really, really annoying. So Virtual Desktop has been the way for me. But I haven't actually. They all work fine. I haven't had like a connectivity issue. But I have found that the walls in our house are very thick. And if I walk outside of the range of those things, video quality degrades very quickly. And then it's eventually just like get back into the zone, basically.
Okay.
So he's talking here about increasing the bitrate, not helping with Beat Saber, but does it help you? In any
Yeah, it
way?
does.
Right.
Yeah. The higher the bitrate definitely helps. I use max bitrate with what is it, VP1 encoding or
AV1?
AV1, not VP.
Well, then it's got to be good.
AV1 encoding,
AV1.
which is supported through Virtual Desktop and obviously the 40 series cards.
Maybe that's it.
In hardware.
AV1 is quite a lot better than what you could do otherwise.
Yeah,
So-
AV1 will have, basically your bitrate will go much further in terms of image quality compared to, H.264 and HEVC, I guess.
So yeah, I mean, just fiddling around with Virtual Desktop, I have zero complaints. Everything just is perfect in terms of image quality. Like I think in very specific situations, you can maybe just slightly detect video artifact, but it's really hard to see, and largely it looks native. I remember when Mark from My Life in Gaming visited, he didn't really believe me on this. He almost believed me because I'm one of the only people that he trusts in terms of judging image quality, but he was still skeptical. And then he tried it, and he just kept for the rest of the day. He was like, I don't understand how this is possible. This doesn't make sense. How is this possible? Like he could not believe how good it looked. And that's my experience with it. And his experience, he went and bought one. So
Wow.
same experience.
Wow.
We're all on board with this though. So, but obviously again, if your router is not up to the task,
Yeah. Problems.
I think it's transferring a lot of data really fast. And if your router has an issue, if there's a connection issue, if the signal's not strong enough, then yeah, the experience probably will not be great. But what I did actually is I had a spare router so I had the one in the downstairs. So I mostly would play downstairs. My PC's upstairs, but I also put an extra spare router that I just plugged in upstairs in my main gaming room that nothing's really connected to it except for it's like part of a mesh, I guess, kind of setup. But it's a second router that I tied into the network, and I use that if I want to do VR in my room. So it's like a second VR access point. And it's like, as long as you have those set up, you get good coverage. But that's really important.
So to answer Daniel here, there is hope for you wireless warriors. And you don't need confounding cables.
Right.
Okay. Good stuff.
AV1. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to this question from Sir Lanky III. Hi, gents. Recently moved from a QLED to a QD OLED for my big screen PC gaming, and I've been introduced to the scourge that is VRR flicker. I know most of you have been using OLEDs for a while, so how do you deal with it? My own research points to it just being a case of deal with it, quote unquote. Unfortunately, it's only been a big deal in one game so far, Stellaris, where it's like a constant strobe light. Turning VRR off solves it, obviously, but that's not ideal for most games. Cheers for your time, and good luck with the meetings this week! Exclamation point. John, is it just a case of just deal with it?
The VR flicker
Yeah.
stuff?
It's not
It's
been an
OLED
issue for me.
low. So the thing
That only
is,
seems to happen when the frame rate in question is quite variable.
Yeah.
And you're looking at stuff that's like near black, kind of like low light.
it's frame time variations of a higher degree, I think, too.
Right. When the frame time is more variable, it's just I think it's just the nature of it.
In my humble opinion, they should keep VRR on, but lock down the frame rate through other means to prevent as much of the variation of frame times as possible. So they're probably getting, I don't know, like 90, and then Stellaris, I don't actually know the performance profile of that game, but I'd imagine it's got bad frame times in some aspect. And then maybe lock it down to 70 or something like that, so that the frame time variation is better and you don't get as much, I don't know, of the flicker, which is it's a real possibility.
I think even if it's steady, though, some near black stuff can have a little bit of VR flicker as well.
Right.
But I can't say it really something I notice most of the time, just in a couple instances. Mm-hmm. Like the Medium.
You saw it
when
there.
I played that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
That had a lot of that VR flicker.
Yeah.
Also, like I think the main menu of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, that the remake, there's a part of the menu that has a bit of visible flicker for some reason. But outside of that, I don't really usually notice it in games.
So the flicker would still be there if you like lock to a lower frame rate, right? Or is it just the variability?
I think it gets worse with variability, but it can still appear with like specific near black, like low light scenes.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that at all. But I just think obviously the thing you're noticing beyond the fact that it is flickering is just variability in things. We always want consistent experiences. You can get used to 60 hertz CRT flicker, for example. It's real.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't not exist, but you can get used to it really quickly.
Yeah,
so.
we had 50 hertz in
Well, that's hard to get used to. It's really visual. That's 50 hertz is really visual. My goodness.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, this is a really interesting question, actually. It's from Isfandjar, in brackets, Saskia, or Saskira. Sorry.
Cool name.
Hi, team. I hope you're all well. Yeah, fair to middling. Thank you. I'm a little bit confused about CPU usage and DLSS presets. If performance mode, whilst my TV resolution is set to 4K, essentially upscales and renders 1080p to 4K, does that mean the CPU is taxed more because it has to render it at a lower res initially? Traditional low res is more CPU bound if you have a super powerful GPU. My brain can't make sense of it. Thanks. I hope you have a lovely dinner.
Thank you.
We'll talk about dinner shortly, Alex. But,
yeah.
Well, yes, obviously, the whole point of DLSS is to essentially increase performance, right? Which is basically meaning that, yes, you're running internally at a lower resolution. Obviously, there's various bits and pieces that add to the rendering load. But yes, the whole point of it is that it increases the frame rate. Now, the higher the frame rate goes, then obviously you may well not be fully utilizing the CPU because your CPU can't keep up with feeding the GPU.
Yeah.
And I've recently been looking at brand new CPU tests, and there are a lot of games where if you run them at 4K resolution DLSS performance mode, which looks fine, by the way, you will hit CPU limits. Just a couple of examples off the top of my head. Baldur's Gate 3, once you're in a sort of populated area. Dragon's Dogma 2, another example where you could easily be CPU limited. You don't really need a 4090, but basically the balance changes. A lot of games, even Horizon Forbidden West, when you're in a sort of town area, you could be CPU
Start
limited.
getting CPU limited there without frame gen.
Yep. And Microsoft Flight Simulator, any kind of city, DLSS, I mean, you don't even need DLSS at that point. You'll be CPU limited. So, yes, that is the answer. Hopefully your brain can make sense of it. But on a broader level, Alex, this is kind of bringing home to me that the sort of established sort of internet wisdom of how a PC should be balanced is kind of shifting, right? Because it's typically been the case that, the CPU is not as important as the GPU. But with the arrival of DLSS particularly, you can find yourself CPU limited even with a 4090 or even lower.
Yeah.
Look at Hogwarts Legacy, for example. It doesn't really matter what GPU you've got. Any high-end GPU, you'll be CPU limited on that. Jedi Survivor. I was looking at Jedi Survivor and Flight Simulator. I was looking at 50% GPU utilization on a 4090.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's not only this. You have to be worrying about CPU utilization and being CPU limited, just because I also think we want, just said it earlier, consistent experiences. And as soon as you start being CPU limited, frame times are less consistent in general. And these games, like, it's not just the 4090, but you kind of want to stock up on a CPU as much as possible to a certain degree if you are going to be targeting high frame rate anyway, which this person definitely is, because they said 4K and they're talking about DLSS performance. I highly doubt they're talking about sub 60 experiences usually. So in this case, yeah, it's 100% something to worry about, even at 4K, even in a VRR context, because not a lot of modern game engines and AAA games can really do high frame rate really well. Yeah. It's hard.
It's really interesting, right, John? Because there's been this argument that DLSS has been a crutch for poor optimization. But what I'm actually finding is that DLSS frame generation is a crutch for poor CPU utilization.
It is. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of, I assume, partly the reason that it was developed in the first place is because they knew their GPUs were really pushing performance peaks, and the CPUs just weren't there yet, and they're still not. And this was like, well, how can we leverage our GPUs to essentially overcome some of these CPU bottlenecks? And that's what it does. So it's basically the graphics card manufacturers trying to make up for the shortcomings of CPUs.
And it actually, I think, makes things really interesting because, let's say you are on 4K performance mode. Obviously, you can move up to 4K quality and you probably won't be impacted that much. But more to the point, what you can do is actually invoke more visual features, go harder on ray tracing, use the GPU in different ways. So that's actually been quite interesting. But yes, I mean, we've not really been covering CPUs in any great depth. I mean, for a while now, but I do think that there is a case here that we need to start taking it a bit more seriously because, DLSS and poor CPU utilization in games. There was this glorious period, I think, during the 8700K period where people were saying, you don't really need to worry about the CPU anymore. Any game could be run at 60 FPS. And, I was just thinking to myself, have you played Kingdom Come Deliverance? It was like, no. Yeah. But, we're reaching the point now where, graphics are scaling, CPUs aren't so much. And, you kind of need frame generation to get yourself back into that high refresh rate window on a lot of these AAA games. But, yeah, I'd really like to do a sort of quantifiable sort of analysis now. 7800X3D, even there, the fastest gaming CPU, having issues there. Let's move on. One more question. And this one is from Takashino. I saw a rumor claiming that Sony is making a handheld capable of playing PS4 games. Now, rumors are rumors, but thinking about it, a decent Switch-sized screen would probably make a game like Bloodborne look pretty good, which the heavy post-processing was too much on a 27-inch monitor for me. Do you think that the PS4 library has a lot of games that would benefit from that form factor, John?
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that would be really cool if they could actually deliver a machine that, if they were able to somehow make a PS4 in that form factor. That would be pretty tough, though, because of the power draw, and there's other issues that makes it really challenging. The thing that
stands out to me is memory bandwidth.
That's just...
The PS4 had a monstrous balance of compute to bandwidth.
The OG.
So, yeah. It's basically a matter of, I love this idea. I'm just not sure it's actually technically feasible.
Yeah, it's also weird because, like, the handhelds, I think the Steam Deck especially, is like lower res, and that's how they can get away with the power profile that they have. But as soon as you bump up to 1080p, regardless of the fact that, would this be even using Jaguar? What would this thing look like? Like, is there anything in the AMD portfolio that exists to do this?
You can't. It'd have to be so.
It's weird.
I can't see them doing a backwards compatible, RDNA 4 mobile GPU that would run PS4 at full throttle. I mean, I'm looking at the PS4 bandwidth is like 176 gigabytes.
They need something
second.
that can run this stuff natively without issue, and I just don't think that exists in the mobile space right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could. I think they'd have to report the games. That's the issue,
which
because
that's a lot less enticing because that drives a
And they wouldn't report blood.
But if they did that, though, I mean, that could also mean they could technically start doing like paired back PS5 versions of games.
Similar to
Cross-buy.
the ROG Ally and Steam Deck. Even the fact is that you'd have a more modern GPU. You wouldn't be using a 5400 RPM hard drive.
No.
I think if Sony tries to get back into handhelds, they have to find a way to tie it directly into their consoles.
Yeah.
Somehow. They can't just be a bespoke platform anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Even Nintendo shifted away from that with the Switch.
Yeah. I'd really love to see it. I just can't
don't see how.
happening.
Technically.
Possibly. I mean, but at the same time, they must be looking at Steam Deck and thinking, this is working out pretty well. Maybe we should cut into this market a bit. And I think they could do an amazing job, because you look at Vita, the specifications, the clocks are actually super low.
Yeah.
And yet they were delivering experiences that were comparable to PS3 at the time.
Look at the freaking Portal. The thing sold like shockingly well, even though it's not very good. So if they actually did a proper handheld kind of thing and did it right, and it kind of somehow integrated into the system in a way, I don't know, it could be a big winner.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is the last question.
Oh.
This one's from perfect_organism, and he says,
He's back.
Yep. All right. All right. Let's get down to brass tacks. What are you all ordering for dinner in London? Basically, yesterday we were here for the IGN meeting, obviously post-acquisition of Gamer Network. But it's interesting. We didn't really learn too much about where things are going to go. It was basically, here's our philosophy as IGN. Here's some of the outlook that we have on the market. Here's how we do things at IGN.
Very interesting.
Various questions, getting to know you questions and whatnot. And, we had some really good conversations with the IGN management. But there wasn't really any sort of, let's get down to brass tacks and strategy. And and then we went for dinner with all four of us. Tom was here as well.
Mm-hmm.
And dinner, Nando's, cheeky Nando's.
It was good.
So here's the thing, right? You guys came in on, was it Wednesday night?
Yeah.
We went out, had a dinner, very expensive dinner for 3 people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nando's was 4 people, half the price.
Better.
Half the price.
Wow. Okay.
And Alex, you were
devoured half a
delighted.
chicken.
Oh, yeah, because you looked truly carnivorous during that meal.
Yeah.
You got to strip it to the bone. It was awesome. This is my second Nando's. Rich had to remind me of that. I was like, have I seen the light before? Yes, you
Well,
have.
you don't. Here's the thing. I'm not sure whether our friends in our friends in North America are even aware of the Nando's phenomenon.
Yeah, probably not.
And you guys don't have it in Germany.
No.
It's like a major cultural deficit, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
You went for extra hot on your chicken, Alex. Liquid hot magma.
It was it was extra hot, but I thought it was very tasty though. It wasn't like sometimes when you have like extra hot things, it just exists to like impress your friends. But this was actually tasty. And I wasn't like boiling afterward. It was really good.
You were mopping your brow with a napkin.
I did once. Yes, I did a good that. Yeah,
John?
It was good.
Oh, I had that one sandwich. Had really good chicken seasoning. There was something with the sauce in there. It was just fantastic. It was good. I don't even remember which one it was, but I enjoyed that.
Rich?
Yeah, that was cool. Just chicken breast for me as always. Yeah.
But the sides, spicy rice,
Yes.
and rainbow slaw or something.
Rainbow slaw, yeah,
right.
because you guys wanted the long stem broccoli and it was out.
It was
Yeah,
out.
it was
Yeah.
out. Dang.
To be honest, you did. You chose the right one.
We did. I didn't even know, but
Being
it was
more aware of
serendipitous.
the Nando's offering, I think that actually worked out in your favor.
Oh yeah, it
did.
Next time in the UK, I would totally eat Nando's again. It was good.
But yeah, this is the first time you've been in the UK since what, 2019?
2019.
I was here briefly in 2021. Wait, when did COVID start? 2020?
2020.
Yeah, sorry, 2020.
Bad year.
When I did my visit to CIG, and also went here just around the country a little bit. And then coming back here now. But that last time I didn't see anyone from DF or anything.
No.
Nope.
So this is the first time we saw Tom, you and I.
It's the first time the
5
four of
years.
us been together
5
for
years.
5 years, which is quite astonishing when you think about it.
Yep.
It's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy.
And yeah, basically a big thanks to our friends at IGN here, Jesse Gomez in particular, who has sorted out this amazing studio for us, taken all of the technical worries away from us. We can just sit down and have a conversation,
Exactly.
not feeling the fatigue like we do usually
Yep. It's been
when we
wonderful.
get to an end of a massive direct.
Yeah, I'm feeling good.
And I'll tell you what, I want to do a shout out to Oscar.
Yes.
We were just walking along the London streets
yeah.
last night, and Oscar said, "You're Digital Foundry."
Yeah, that was
He couldn't
great.
believe his eyes, could he?
Yeah, all of us together too, except for
Yeah.
Will. Sorry, Will, not here.
Will's in Japan.
And
Yeah.
Oliver.
So yeah,
Oliver too.
that was an interesting experience. I don't think I've ever been stopped on the street before.
I have.
What?
I think we have.
Yeah, we
Outside
have.
of away from a gaming venue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once or twice now.
Multiple times,
Yeah.
including the Detroit airport was a great one. That was fun.
Was it the
It was
TSA?
The
agent?
TSA agent was a big Digital Foundry fan.
Really?
Yeah, and because he called out my name. I was like, wait, oh shit, I was in trouble. And he's just like, dude, I love it, what you guys do.
That's great, though. Yeah, it was really nice. Thank you, Oscar, for saying hello to us. And yeah, it also just came out of nowhere. I think we were just walking and talking, and all of a sudden I heard Alex. I was like, it was good.
That was awesome. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. That's the end of this show, and brought to you thanks to IGN. So if you did enjoy it, please do like, subscribe, share, ring bells for things that may or may not happen. Shout out for the DF store.digitalfoundry.net. Once again, I'm wearing the DF Seal of Quality shirt. And yes, DF supporter program. Join us, join our amazing community, submit questions to the direct, suggest topics, get early access to all of our materials, or a great deal of our materials at least. Video downloads going all the way back to late 2016. That's like 8 years of stuff we're coming up on. Yeah. And yeah, that's all from us for this one. Thanks for watching and supporting Digital Foundry. And thanks again to Jesse, who's just joined us in the room, taking care of
Peek in here.
Yeah, we can come on in.
Get in the shot in the
I'll
middle here.
scooch in over here awkwardly.
Yeah.
That was good.
Thanks so much to Jesse.
blessing.
I was having
Thank
nightmares
you.
of bringing in multiple
All the gear.
cameras,
HDMI cable.
HDMI cables.
Very important old Xbox One HDMI cable.
Yep, and multiple lapel mix. But you've taken all of that away from us, and that's just been I could relax.
Yeah, well,
So
so
thanks for that.
it's been a fantastic experience having you guys here, and I hope you've felt very welcome. And I'm a small cog in a now very expanded and I guess diverse team with Network Gamer here and IGN. I'm just hoping for future collaborations, and again, it's just an exciting start.
It'll
I
happen.
suppose.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for making us welcome and for sorting all of this out for us. It's been really appreciated because it's not often that we're together. So
No.
yeah, you've really made it special. So thanks for that.
No worries.
And yeah, thanks for everyone for watching and supporting Digital Foundry, and we'll see you next week.